Warrior Lore. Chapter 530. The Alchemists Center. Chapter 530. The Alchemists Center. The Dead Soul Mountain's topography was special. It was situated between the Radiant God Cult, the Pure Land, and the Devil Valley, and the distances between them weren't too large. However, no force managed this area. The ones who often visited this area were the alchemists and the blacksmiths at all levels. Rumors said that there were thousands of alchemists and blacksmiths living in the Dead Soul Mountain. This special class of the Grace Mainland liked the Dead Soul Mountain and made it the center of the alchemists and blacksmiths of the entire Grace Mainland. Among the other warriors, the alchemists and the blacksmiths belonged to the noble class. Normally, the alchemists and the blacksmiths wouldn't depend on any forces, as they had dedicated their whole lives to refine pellets and secret treasures. Those people were quiet, odd, and didn't like to get along well with the others. However, in the Dead Soul Mountain, the alchemists and the blacksmith lived in harmony. They studied and discussed the Upanishads of refining pellets and forging treasures with each other. When warriors living around the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley were in need of pellets or secret treasures, they would bring abundant materials to the Dead Soul Mountain, then find the corresponding alchemist or blacksmith to refine the desired items. Of course, they had to pay for the service. Many warriors from the Grace Mainland came here to refine pellets and specialized treasures for their sects, even though they had to travel a long distance for this. The Dead Soul Mountain had many qualified alchemists and blacksmiths. When they came here with an attractive payment, they could have what they desired. The alchemists and the blacksmiths here had formed a system in the Dead Soul Mountain. They didn't turn their back to the 7 ancient factions or took part in the dispute between them. These special warriors had a great passion for refining medicines and forging weapons. They wouldn't favor anyone, as they only followed their own rules. As long as the payment was good, they could forge weapon or refine pellet for anyone. Also, no matter how furious the battle between the 7 old factions was, they would never target the Dead Soul Mountain. In this continent, the Dead Soul Mountain was quite a peaceful place with good conditions for refining things. Warriors living around there often traded cultivating materials with the alchemists or the blacksmiths. This place was the holy temple of the alchemists and the blacksmiths. Living on numerous grand mountains were the alchemists and the blacksmiths. The strongest alchemists and blacksmiths took the richest mountains. Some of them taught disciples, while some just cultivated alone to find the acme of their refining and forging treasures, sinking in what they called the Great Path. 2 valleys were backing each other in the center of the Dead Soul Mountain. They were called the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley. These 2 valleys were vast, as big as a small city, and were surrounded boisterously year-round. People who traveled to the Spirit Potion Valley were all the alchemists, while warriors who visited the Precious Tool Valley were all blacksmiths. The Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley had many shops where cultivating materials to refine medicines or forge weapons were sold. Outsiders could always visit these 2 valleys to find the alchemists and blacksmiths to refine the items they wanted, as long as they could find the right person with an appropriate price. Generally, the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley were almost free. They didn't have many rules or taxes. Not only human warriors, even the beasts and the pagans were free to enter the places. No one would specially target them. Warrior lore. There were almost 1,000 mountains in the Dead Soul Mountain range, and half of them were occupied by intimidating beasts. Those beasts could transform to human form, and their powers were much more tremendous than human warriors at the same level. Anyway, the beasts there lived in harmony with the alchemists and blacksmiths. They didn't fight often. Beasts which could cultivate to the peak and have intelligence were no less smart than mankind, so they also needed good medicines and weapons. Since they were living inside the Dead Soul Mountain range, they understood the cultivating materials there better. Beasts who came to find the alchemists or blacksmiths with sufficient amount of materials often prepared better payment than human warriors. Usually, the alchemists and the blacksmith wouldn't deny the offer and would cooperate with the beasts. Thanks to its special features, the Dead Soul Mountain range had attracted many strange races, some of them being super strong. They had settled down and earned a decent living in the Dead Soul Mountain range. They had been cultivating silently, gathering the energy of heaven and earth to increase their realms, while collecting rare and precious materials there to prepare more medicines and weapons for their tribes. As Yin was flying over the Dead Soul Mountain range, he released his soul consciousness, frequently sensing strong aura emitted from each mountain. These auras came from humans and beasts, but some came from sources he was unsure of. Perhaps these auras came from the peculiar souls he had never encountered before. Mankind, beasts, and pagans lived together in the Dead Soul Mountain range and didn't interfere each other's life. However, they often went to the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley to do business with human alchemists and blacksmiths. All of them lived together in peace and harmony. The Dead Soul Mountain range was vast. With his Sky Realm cultivation base, Yin spent 7 days flying to cross couples hundreds of mountains. Finally, he arrived the Spirit Potion Valley in the center of the Dead Soul Mountain range. The Spirit Potion Valley bathed in the sunbeams of a new dawn. Under the warm sunlight, he could see people moving and spacious streets packed with stores and shops. Many human warriors and alchemists were moving in front of the shops, finding the raw materials they needed. Among them were humanoid beasts wearing clothes with sharp horns on their heads, or having a long tail behind their bottom. All of them were operating equally in the Spirit Potion Valley. No human warriors in the valley showed a strange face on seeing the beasts, because it was all totally normal to them. Warriors living here had soon recognized the existence of the demonic beasts and pagan tribes. They would never look at them with a bias. Yin observed the situation for a while from outside the valley and was quite surprised. In the Endless Sea, Chao Qiu Dao, Yang Tian Emperor, and Yang Yi Tian were totally racist. They only acknowledged mankind as the master of the continent. Except for humans, all were considered pagans. According to them, the Sea Tribes, the Dark Dwellers, the Demon Dwellers were all sinister races that should be uprooted. When the demonic Sound Clan and the Winged Clan had first entered the Endless Sea, the warriors there saw them with fear and hatred, as if there were a big grudge between them, and that the demonic Sound Clan and the Winged Clan shouldn't exist. The Dead Soul Mountain range gave him a brand new understanding. Warriors living around here wouldn't make the beasts or pagans their enemies, and they wouldn't want to kill them all. Demonic beasts, human beings, and pagans had lived together under one roof, all borrowing the rich cultivating materials of the Dead Soul Mountain range to improve their powers. The atmosphere here was much comfortable and free than the Endless Sea. After a long time observing from a far distance, Yin wore an admiring face. He couldn't help but think that when the demonic Sound Clan and the Winged Clan came to the Divine Great Land, the Dead Soul Mountain range might be the best choice for them. Lingering outside the Spirit Potion Valley for a while, Yin walked into the valley alone. Next, he took a trip around the shops randomly. He was quite surprised and happy as he had a good feeling about this Spirit Potion Valley. The shops in the Spirit Potion Valley sold spirit herbs, miracle fruits, and strange fluids used for refining medicine. At first glance, he could see that the raw materials that were considered precious in the Endless Sea were common and available everywhere. And he also saw many medical ingredients which he had never seen before. They were also widely available. It was worth being the famous center of the alchemists in the whole continent. He complimented in his mind as his impression of the Spirit Potion Valley grew better. Apparently, the cultivating materials in the Spirit Potion Valley were much more abundant than the Endless Sea, and he was sure that the warriors from other areas could never have the attainment of the alchemists here. Walking along the street, he was surprised on seeing the rare materials they had. The sunlight faded out. Seeing the sun was about to set, he remembered the purpose of his trip. Musing for a while, he then walked towards the general direction of the Spirit Hall of the Spirit Potion Valley. The Spirit Hall was a special place for outsiders seeking a suitable alchemist. It was a business center. Warriors could go there to advertise the mission they wanted to accomplish. When the alchemists and the blacksmith couldn't find the materials they needed, they could also ask the Spirit Hall to notice and search for them. The payment would be decent, though. When Yichang Feng gave him the token, he told him to go to the Spirit Hall in the Spirit Potion Valley and give it to the person in charge, following which, someone would welcome him well. Yichang Feng's master was considered owing him a favor. In the Grace Mainland, an excellent alchemist always had good relationship with many connections. The reason why he wanted to find Yi Changfeng's teacher was to contact the Pure Land through him, as he wanted to use the life original fluid to exchange for Xia Xian Yin and to save her soul from vanishing. In his original plan, he wanted to visit the Radiant God cult first. However, given the advice from Bai Gu San, he had to give up his initial plan, as he was afraid that if he went to the Radiant God cult, some experts there might see through the difference in his body. Thus, he had to go further to find the Dead Soul Mountain. In the Spirit Hall, many warriors wearing bluish-gray robe embroidered with the symbol of the Alchemists were introducing the newest information to their customers in a business-like manner. After Shi Yin got into the place, he reached the nearest guard, smiled at him, and showed him the token. "Do you recognize this token?" The mystery third-rank alchemist was dazed, looking at the token and then Shi Yin himself, asking him surprisingly, "What's this?" Shi Yin was bewildered, showing the token to the man again. "A friend of mine gave me this. He told me to go to the Spirit Potion Valley and show the token and someone would receive me. Take another look carefully." The mystery third-rank alchemist was dazed. He checked the token carefully. Minutes later, he shivered while his eyes brightened. "Sir, please wait a moment. I'll bring the token to my master. Please wait. Don't go. Wait for me here. Just a moment." Chapter 531. Spirit Hall. Chapter 531. Spirit Hall. Behind the Spirit Hall was a spacious room, matted with thick, soft fur rug. The walls of that room had many exquisite carvings of caterpillar fungus. Standing in the middle of the room was an incense burner, from where fragrant smoke of precious grass diffused. The room was warm, with gems sparkling from the ceiling. Jia Lin wore a gold-plated robe of the alchemist, which had 3 spirit herbs embroidered on the shoulder. This was the insignia of a third rank of profound-level alchemist. As one of the persons in charge of the Spirit Hall, Jia Lin worked daily there to manage the operations of the hall. At this moment, he was wearing an arrogant face, lying on his side on a tiger skin and fur-covered chair. He looked at the 2 first sky of Spirit Realm warriors in front of him with an impatient face. These 2 Spirit Realm warriors wanted him to refine pellets for them. However, they didn't pay enough to satisfy him. Jia Lin felt a little bit irritated. Jia Lin had just entered the Spirit Realm, but he had mainly depended on the aid of medicines. His realm wasn't high, and his power couldn't be compared to the 2 in front of him now. Anyway, as he was an alchemist, he had the confidence that the others had to satisfy him. "Go home. Without 3 pieces of the silver stargrass, I won't help you." Jia Lin waved his hand and couldn't help but grunt. "Wait until you 2 can collect the silver stargrass. If I have free time, I will consider refining the fierce golden pellet for you guys. But now, please go." The 2 first sky of Spirit Realm warriors stood opposite him, shook their heads in distress and sighed. They were about to leave. At this moment, a guard of the Spirit Hall stormed in, didn't bow to him but walked directly to Jia Lin while breathing heavily. "Teacher, look at this." Jia Lin arched his brows, snorted, then scolded the guard. "Don't you have any manners?" While complaining, he took the token and flipped it over to watch. His face changed immediately as he shot up from his seat while shouting, "Where did you get this token?" "A young man brought it here," answered the guard with fear. Jia Lin jumped off his chair, taking the guard out of the room and going to the lounge of the Spirit Hall. "The brother over there." The guard pointed at Shi Yin from afar. A smile filled Jia Lin's face all of a sudden, his face serval. He came to Shi Yin and greeted him. First, he solemnly handed back the token to Shi Yin and asked, "May I help you?" Shi Yin was amazed, then nodded to him. "I want to find the owner of this token." Jia Lin's eyes brightened as he asked with caution, "How do you relate to Elderly? Why do you have his token?" "I don't know him. He owed me something, so I want to find him and ask him for a favor," answered Shi Yin. Jia Lin wore a fearful complexion, screaming in surprise. "You say, Elderly owed you a favor?" Shi Yin nodded the second time. Jia Lin wore a disbelieving face, his expression interesting. He hesitated for a while and then said, "When Elderly came back last time, he announced that he would not refine medicines for anyone for a while. Also, he asked us not to disturb him. Currently, We don't dare to contact him directly, otherwise. What should I do? You shall take that token and directly visit the Flying Cloud Summit. You can talk with his disciples there to see if he wants to meet you or not. Where's the Flying Cloud Summit? The Dead Soul mountain range had almost 1,000 mountains, scattering in a large area. The distance between the two mountains could take up to 10 days traveling. If he didn't know the exact location, searching with his luck only, he would have to spend so much time. Hold on. I'll see if I can take you to the Flying Cloud Summit myself. Xiaolin contemplated, then took out a sound crystal. He held it next to his lips, then muttered. It seemed the man was asking whether he needed to guard the spirit hall or not. There were so many alchemists and warriors, their customers, walking back and forth. Many of them knew Xiaolin. As they saw Xiaolin's servile face when talking to Shi Yin, they secretly paid attention to them and tried to guess Shi Yin's identity. Who is that man? Why does Xiaolin have to treat him with good care? It's weird. Xiaolin is one of the experienced masters of the Spirit Hall. He's a noble man in the Spirit Potion Valley. He has never been obsequious to big men from the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley, right? I don't know. I've never met that young man before. From his clothing, I can say he's not an alchemist. I have no clue. I've been begging Xiaolin many times for a spirit comfort pellet, yet he has never agreed to help me. I'm a spirit realm expert, and that little guy has just the sky realm cultivation base. Xiaolin took wrong medicine today, didn't he? Ghost knows that. People in the surroundings discussed with low tones. They were eyeing Shi Yin, guessing his real status with awe. After talking to the sound crystal for a while, Xiaolin sighed and shook his head with disappointment. I'm sorry. I can't leave the workplace currently. If you aren't hurried, can you wait for half of a month later? Then I can take you to the Flying Cloud Summit personally. Is it okay? Shi Yin shook his head. Xiaolin forced a smile while musing. I will let my favorite disciple take you there. She knows the location of the Flying Cloud Summit, too. Good then. Having heard that, Xiaolin was joyful. He made a call through the sound crystal. Cherry, come here quickly. Not long after that, a girl with a calm expression and wearing a long blue dress walked towards them from a shop not far from there. Her deep blue eyes sparkled as she felt displeased. Teacher, why did you call me here? I was negotiating the price of the multicolored devil mask flower. I had almost gotten it. This girl had long maroon hair cascading over her shoulder. She stood upright, and her eyes were like precious jade, sparkling with a shining blue light. As she appeared, many alchemists and warriors in the Spirit Hall had their eyes brightened up, with their line of sight gluing on her. On her left ample bosom were embroidered 5 pieces of spirit herbs. This meant she was a 5th rank of profound level alchemist. Besides, she was a 2nd sky of Sky Realm warrior. Cherry, take this little brother to the Flying Cloud Summit. Xiaolin assigned her with a low tone. The Flying Cloud Summit? Cherry's blue eyes brightened. She looked at Shi Yin with astonishment, then nodded. I got it. Yeah. Seems our little brother has just visited the Dead Soul Mountain range for the first time. We shouldn't delay his business. Along the way, you should introduce the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley to him too, advised Xiaolin. Cherry smiled and then nodded. She looked as natural and generous as an elegant orchid flower. Sorry for bothering you, Shi Yin bent, smiling brightly. No need to be too polite. Cherry nodded. Her blue eyes showed that she was interested in him. She eyed him for a while and then asked, Do you want to go now? Yes, please. Okay, we shall depart now. The Flying Cloud Summit's in the east of the Dead Soul Mountain. It should take around 4 days from the Spirit Potion Valley. Cherry thought for a while and then added, At night, you have to be more careful. Dead souls in the Dead Soul Mountain range will go out at night to hunt. Don't let them nib your soul. Okay, let's go. The moon shone brightly in the late night. Under the clear moonlight, Cherry was gliding in the sky with a pair of dreamy blue wings on her back. She was as agile as a fairy in the pellucid night. Shi Yin flew behind her, looking at her blue wings with surprise. Cherry beamed a faint smile as if she had recognized his look. She turned around and talked to him. This indigo soaring wing's a profound level secret tool. I had asked a blacksmith in the Precious Tool Valley to forge it for me. The indigo soaring wing can enhance my flying speed, and it also can attack. Watch this. Hazy, cold blue light shot out like steel needles from the indigo wings, leaving toe-sized holes drilled on the rock cliff. Good tool, Shi Yin complimented. Pretty and exquisite. Cherry smiled lightly. This indigo soaring wing is not considered a dangerous treasure yet. The blacksmiths of the Precious Tool Valley can fabricate many unimaginable weapons that you can't even count the number of. Some of those treasures even have intelligence. Those are pretty awesome. Shi Yin nodded. Hey, why do you want to go to the Flying Cloud Summit? Cherry wore a curious face. As far as I know, Precipitous in the Flying Cloud Summit is one of the 5 Grand Elders of our Spirit Hall. He rarely comes to the Spirit Potion Valley. He stays and refines medicines in the Flying Cloud Summit. He doesn't have many disciples. He's a bit arrogant, though. We haven't met him for years, such a mysterious alchemist. Elder of the Spirit Hall. Shi Yin was astounded. The Spirit Hall is also a force of warriors? Not exactly, Cherry shook her head. The Spirit Hall was established by 5 sacred-level alchemists. It's to manage the Spirit Potion Valley and facilitate the business with warriors from the outside and the valley's alchemists. Normally, the 5 Grand Elders will not participate in the daily operation of the Spirit Hall. In some special occasions, they will show up and stay in the Spirit Hall for several days to do the talks on the medicine refining principles to alchemists in the Spirit Potion Valley. The Spirit Hall has never restrained the alchemists or cared what the warriors' purposes are. It's just a place for people to do business, providing the chance for them to discuss and negotiate. It won't control the detailed content of their business or collect any taxes and fees. So, the Spirit Hall is a good place. Shi Yin smiled. Are you a guard of the Spirit Hall too? Yes, Cherry nodded. We are the guards of the Spirit Hall. We help our teacher to manage the work in the Spirit Hall. Although we can't earn any chi jades from it, there's something that benefits us. That's why we are willing to take this responsibility. What benefit? People who are in charge of the Spirit Hall can ask the 5 Grand Elders regarding a difficulty they meet in refining medicines. And the guards like us can listen to their discussions when the elders visit the Spirit Hall. Of course, it only happens when the 2 elders visit at the same time, and they have the mood to discuss with each other about the attainment in refining medicines. Cherry was passionate when she talked about it, but then she seemed to be distressed. What a pity that I've been a guard for 5 years, but I have never met such good chances. The 5 Grand Elders, who are the sacred-level alchemists, rarely visit the Spirit Potion Valley. Even if they come, they just greet us and go. We didn't have any chances to talk with them. Buzz, buzz, buzz. While Cherry was talking, Shi Yin heard a strange humming in his head. Shi Yin was dumbstruck, with a surprised countenance. The 5 devils had been dormant for a really long time, but now they seemed to be awake all of a sudden. Chapter 532. Awakening. Chapter 532. Awakening. The 5 devils in his inner world gathered despair, fear, bloodlust, greed, and resentment into one entity. In the land of the hollow spirits, they had swallowed a lot of hollow spirits and then lay dormant. They had no response, as they seemed to head towards an evolution, changing slowly. Shi Yin had almost forgotten that he had these 5 devils hiding in his sea of consciousness. As they were flying above the Dead Soul Mountain range, he didn't know what sort of energy provoked them, making them scream inside his sea of consciousness. Soon, they would wake up, the thought of which frightened Shi Yin. He couldn't help but sink into his mind to carefully check the status of the 5 devils. In his sea of consciousness, the 5 devils were like 5 groups of dusky smoke where he couldn't see the despair, fear, bloodthirsty, greed, and resentment hovering clearly. Usually, just a small stir-up was enough to provoke these negative feelings. The screaming came from the middle of the 5 devils. At the same time, those dark groups of smoke took turns to transform marvelously. The energy meandering around them was dragged into the center. The massive cluster shrank fast. Roughly 10 seconds later, it disappeared. 5 light dots that were as small as the fireflies blinked with a strange light. The volume decreased, but the energy fluctuations became purer. It seemed there were some transformations that were about to happen. After a while, the luminous dots suddenly expanded. Seconds later, they turned into 5 ferocious things, which looked like demogorgons from the antiquity. One had sharp horns on its head, while another one had a green face and yellow fangs. The others had scale armors covering the body entirely, or a pair of wings extended from the back. None of them looked alike. The only similar feature of the 5 of them was the cold, sinister appearance. The technique to cultivate the 5 devils of the inner world came from the blood vein ring. To help the 5 devils grow, he needed to absorb the negative feelings and some kind of energy in his sea of consciousness. When the 5 devils had just been formed, they weren't that strong. So, they could only use soul attacks to restrict the enemies. After a while, when they could finally escape his sea of consciousness, they had the energy enough to build a half-real body, which wasn't too bad. Today, the 5 devils had the second transformation. Observing his mind, Yin found that the appearance of the 5 devils had been improved, too. Even though they were still in his sea of consciousness, they seemed to have real bodies. Flows of gray energy wound around their bodies, which were like human bodies, giving people a feeling of vitality. Roar, roar, roar. Inside the sea of consciousness, the 5 devils were roaring just like demonic beasts who had sensed the scent of fresh blood. They were gliding around and around, trying to escape his sea of consciousness. Yan's pupils shrank, while his face changed. He restored his sound mind, releasing his soul consciousness to the surroundings to check what had attracted his 5 devils. "Are you okay?" Cherry was astounded, her eyes suspicious as she didn't know what was happening to him. This man halted in the middle of the way. Before that, he had been flying smoothly with her. But then, his eyes went blank. Does he have any disease he doesn't want to tell about? Or have the dead souls possessed him? Cherry suddenly felt tense, while her deep blue eyes chilled. She instinctively kept a distance from Yin. When one was possessed by the dead souls, he would become wildly evil and would attack every creature near him. At that time, he wouldn't feel pain or have a fear of death. Most of the ones who got possessed would instantly vent out their most violent attacks, using brutal and deadly ways to kill every living thing around them. The dead souls didn't have a body, so they didn't worry that the explosion of the body they possessed would affect them. What they needed to do was to utilize all skills to kill the others. Then, they would draw the other souls into the dead souls' evil layers to create new dead souls. As Cherry lived in the Dead Soul Mountain range, she understood the features of the dead souls pretty well. When she saw Yan's posture, she started to put up her guard. A lozenge blue crystal that looked like a flame emerged from her palm. The immense blue light was moving inside the crystal, shining like the stars in the sky. The blue light expanded inaudibly, shining on Yin. SSS, SSS, SSS. When the blue light touched Yin, it was like it got burned, turning into smoke and scattering. Cherry was frightened, screaming inside. As she could sense something wrong, she was about to leave. Her soul-checking crystal could check whether a warrior was possessed or not. When the light of the blue crystal reached the ones who got possessed, it would be evaporated instantly. Why was he possessed? There's no aura of dead souls around. Sigh, it's pretty bad this time. How can I answer my teacher? Cherry felt as if she had just swallowed bitter juice. She thought that she should leave Yin and run away. She knew Yin had the third sky of Sky Realm. After the dead soul possessed him, if he burst out instantly his power to kill everyone around, she wouldn't be able to endure it. Also, the treasures she had could hardly resist his strength. So, she didn't want to do the useless things, and wanted to get back to the Spirit Potion Valley first, and then plan the next move. Right when she had flown 100 meters backward, Yan's body shook as he shouted, "Hey, why are you running back?" Cherry's soft body shivered, her face discoloring with fear. She didn't dare to stop and even sped up. Yin was surprised as he had no clue. "What are you doing?" While he was talking, Yin flew like lightning, shooting towards her. He shouted, "What the heck you are doing? I'm not going to harm you. Why do you wear a face as if you have seen a pervert?" Well, it's true that your appearance is attractive to perverts, But you shouldn't think that every man is a pervert, right? Ah, Cherry screamed, looking at Shi Yin blocking her way with shock. She muttered suspiciously, when the high-level dead soul possesses someone, one can still talk like normal people. But should they talk vulgar things like that? Dead souls in the Dead Soul Mountain range divided into many levels. Low levels dead souls didn't have strong soul erosive power. Even if they could possess the warrior, they couldn't talk. Only dead souls at high levels with intimidating soul power could use the host to communicate with people. However, even if it was a high-level dead soul, it could only say some simple things, and it wouldn't be fluent enough. He was possessed by the highest-level dead soul, perhaps? Legend said that the highest-level dead soul had the same intelligence as mankind. When a warrior was taken over by this kind of a dead soul, the dead soul's behavior wasn't much different from humans. Anyway, this sort of dead soul was rare. Not many people had seen them for hundreds of years. Would her luck be that bad today? Cherry was frightened and surprised at the same time, but she didn't continue to flee away. She understood that if she encountered the highest level, dead souls, let alone herself, even her teacher couldn't escape death. Usually, the highest level dead souls would show up when the dead soul's evil layers had some changes. Once this kind of a dead soul appeared, all the alchemists and blacksmiths living in the Dead Soul Mountain range would join hands, and they would even invite the experts from the Radiant God cult, the Pure Land, and the Devil Valley around to help them encounter the enemy. That kind of a dead soul was the most formidable existence. Rumor said that only the absolute true God Realm warriors knew the method to exterminate them. She was just a Sky Realm warrior. If the high-level dead souls used the soul consciousness to control her soul, she couldn't do anything. You. Who are you? Human or dead soul? Cherry regretted it now. She cursed her teacher under her breath. Why he had assigned her such a mission. It's just been a while. Why did you have such big change? Shi Yin was quite happy. Did you see ghosts? You saw ghosts. Cherry barked. Then she was astounded, looking at him. You. Aren't you possessed by a dead soul? But why did my soul-checking crystal say that you have other souls in your sea of consciousness? Only the sinister dead souls can burn the light of the soul-checking crystal. Hearing her say that, Shi Yin immediately responded. Turned out the existence of the 5 devils had her in doubt. The things inside my head aren't the dead souls. There's something else. The features of their souls are somehow similar to the dead souls, though, explained Shi Yin. Cherry was startled, her face odd. You're a freak. If one has no reason, who would keep strange things in their heads? Don't you know that when you're wounded or careless, they can take over your soul and control your body? I know. And I have the method to deal with that. Shi Yin didn't explain further. The 9 Serenity's soul-devouring flame lived in his host's soul, which could swallow all kinds of soul-like beings. Even if the 5 devils were more dangerous, they didn't dare to act rashly in his sea of consciousness. Or else, they would be purified by the flame of the 9 Serenity's soul-devouring flame. With such a tremendous existence to rely on, no matter what kind of souls or strange things entered his sea of consciousness, they would be just finding a way to death for themselves. What happened to you just now? Cherry was dumbstruck. She frowned, asking him as curiosity filled her blue eyes. Nothing. I just found something. Shi Yin smiled, looking at one direction. We'll go there and check it out. Something interesting is happening there. Cherry followed his line of sight, and her smiling face faded. She spoke up with a serious face. That's the place the dead soul's evil layers often appear. Dead souls linger there a lot. Why do you want to get there? To learn about the dead souls. Aren't you afraid that the dead souls would erode your soul? I've seen a lot of young men like you get possessed by the dead souls because they acted rashly and intruded the forbidden area. Their own souls were expelled. I advise you not to take risks. It's okay. I believe nothing would happen to me. Strange light sparked in Cherry's deep blue eyes. Hesitating for a while, she took out a rock panacea, handing it to Shi Yin while feeling painful inside. You should take this rock panacea. It will harden your soul as solid as a rock. Most of the dead souls can't attack you then. I can't refine this type of panacea yet, and my teacher gave me this. Remember, You owe me now. No need. You should keep it. I don't need the support from medicines. Yin shook his head and didn't talk more as he flew towards the direction that the 5 devils had induced. Chapter 533, Hunting Dead Souls. Chapter 533, Hunting Dead Souls. The Dead Souls' evil lairs were the most mysterious exotic area of the Dead Soul mountain range. However, these evil lairs wouldn't stay still. They moved, and someday it would disappear, leaving no trace, only to reappear somewhere else. Normally, only the Dead Souls could sense the exact location of the evil lairs. The region where the evil lairs often appeared would attract many Dead Souls. This kind of an area in the Dead Soul mountain range was the forbidden place. Warriors who didn't have the absolute confidence would never dare to operate alone in these regions. The 5 devils sent Yin their roars, then completed their transformation, in which their power seemed to advance one step further. Then, they sent him their thoughts and said that they wanted to get near to that area. This surprised him. He hesitated for a while, then came to that area to check the situation. Although Cherry didn't feel good about this, she couldn't change his thoughts. So, she had to follow him to the forbidden area where the Dead Soul's evil lairs appeared. It was a valley covered with thick gray clouds. There was no sunlight shining on the valley, even though it was still daytime, which gave people a dark, gloomy atmosphere, irritating them. There were many wild blades of grass in the valley, some of which looked like scythes. Bushes jutted from the ground, just like sharp swords grown on the ground. That's the bone-picking grass. So dangerous. When a human falls into the bushes, they will swarm together and scrape the meat out of their bones to suck the marrow inside. Cherry arrived, her face solemn. She pointed at the grass underneath and advised him, "Don't fall into the bone-picking bushes. Even if you are excellent, it's hard to escape." Yin smiled and nodded. Looking at the bone-picking grass under his feet, he said, "Can we use this strange grass as medicine?" Cherry's brow arched as she beamed a faint smile. "You have a good imagination. The bone-picking grass is a strange flora. How could we use it to refine medicine?" "Ah, no. If you need some poisons, the juice from that grass can help. It can erode the bones and marrow, which stiffens people's limbs." "Does anyone collect the bone-picking grass?" "I'm not sure. I've never tried to refine poisons, so I don't care about it much." Cherry's blue eyes glared at him with strange light as she was shivering inside. This man, is he interested in making poison? Alchemists who created poisons weren't welcomed in the Dead Soul mountain range. If he were interested in making poisons, he could be a sinister guy, too. She should be more cautious. There's some battling. Yin's pupils shrank. He attentively looked at the direction ahead of him, speeding up. Cherry hurried to follow him. Inside the valley covered with ash-gray clouds, 5 Sky Realm warriors were using secret treasures to fight against 3 clusters of dark green mist. The 3 clusters of mist floated vaguely. Sometimes, they appeared like the ferocious demonic beasts. Sometimes they wore hollow human faces, which never stopped changing. From the block of dark green mist, evil, cold aura exuded out, as if it could penetrate into people's minds. The clusters of mist had changed many times, their shapes unidentifiable. They shot out the cold, evil aura, which formed invisible soul attacks, rippling like waves of water and affecting all corners. Among the 5 Sky Realm warriors, there were males and females. However, they weren't alchemists. Each of them was like they were fighting against strong enemies. The secret treasures in their hands all had young attributes. The halos around them were scorching red. Dead souls. Cherry let out a low scream to remind Yin not to go closer. She whispered, "They're hunting dead souls. You shouldn't go there and mess up their business." "Hunting dead souls?" Yin was surprised, frowning. "Didn't you say that the dead souls are really evil and they will erode human souls? If they are that sinister, what do they need to hunt them for?" "Although the dead souls are dangerous, they aren't useless. They're precious materials to a blacksmith." Cherry stood away from them, explaining with low voice. "When they want to make their weapons which have intellect, they can apply some different methods. Among those, The way to make their weapon absorb the natural power of heaven and earth to gain the intellect is the most difficult and mysterious. She paused for a while, and then continued, however, most of the blacksmiths can't do that. So, it's easier to find the things that are similar to the soul and seal them in their weapon. It's the popular method to make the tool gain intellect. The dead souls are a sort of sinister souls, as they have a strong fighting will. If they confuse the dead soul and the tool, the power of that tool will be increased marvelously. A mystery-level treasure can be advanced one level to reach the profound level. So, you mean they are hunting the dead souls to forge weapons? Yin was amazed. They aren't blacksmiths, though. Perhaps they want to find some blacksmiths to forge weapons. And because they want to have intelligent weapons, they have to hunt the dead souls. Cherry understood the situation of the Dead Soul mountain range well. They will erase the independent consciousness, then seal the dead soul in the treasure. Afterward, they will use a special method to activate the ferocious nature of the dead soul, which could increase the power of the treasure. The higher the level of the dead soul is, the stronger the treasure will be. People always do that in the Dead Soul mountain range? Not really. It's not easy to hunt the dead souls. They have to equip the right secret treasures to subdue them. And they also need the rock panacea, because they have to make sure the dead souls can't possess them first. If they can have the right chance, they can catch them. This is very dangerous. If they encounter the low-level dead souls, perhaps they can succeed. But if they have a bad luck facing the dangerous dead souls, they will have to use their lives to make it up. While they were talking, it seemed the 5 warriors ahead of them had almost gotten what they wanted. The 3 dark green dead souls had low levels. They didn't even have a shape. Under the continuous attacks by the Nemesis treasures, the 3 dead souls were struck scattered. Gathering them again was a hard job to do. The 3 dead souls were divided from the center. Just like ragged cloth, they were floating and fluttering in the air, trying to escape. The 5 warriors wore serious faces, not daring to relax. The treasures in their hands were constantly sparking fire, forming a firewall that could block a piece of space. When the dead souls were divided, their powers reduced massively. They didn't dare to cross the firewall, but just increased their erosive soul attacks. The 5 warriors paled. Sweat beaded on their foreheads. Apparently, this kind of erosive soul attack had troubled them seriously. Be persistent, one of them said through his gritted teeth while he was drenched in sweat. These 3 dead souls can't gather again. We just need to resist the last wave of their soul attacks, and we can get them. Don't let your efforts be wasted. Endure it. Those 5 Sky Realm warriors had big age gaps. The leader seemed to be around 50 years old. One of the other 4 was roughly 40. Some looked like they were in their 30s, and there was a young girl about 17 or 18 years old. She looked pretty young. As the 5 of them had joined hands, their treasures constantly moved, generating more flames, which made the 3 dead souls struggle harder. The dead souls are afraid of the powers of flame and lightning. Usually, they don't dare to come close to the flames, but it's hard to burn them to death. Only lightning is their archenemy. In the Dead Soul mountain range, when it thunders, the dead souls will hide away. Cherry explained to Yin about the features of the dead souls while looking at the situation ahead of them. It's not hard to find the weapons with flame attribute. However, the weapons with the lightning power are scarce. Even in the Dead Soul mountain range, this sort of secret treasures is still rare. Warriors who have the lightning attribute treasures won't need to worry about the dead souls in the Dead Soul mountain anymore. As long as they see the treasure, the dead soul will run away in fear. They won't dare to come close. Yin nodded, feeling more secure. With the earth flame here, he didn't need to be afraid of the dead souls. At the same time, the 9 Serenity's soul-devouring flame was the nemesis of this kind of soul beings. If he encountered some brave dead souls, he just needed to release the 9 Serenity's soul-devouring flame to purify them. Roar, roar, roar. Strange roars came up from his sea of consciousness. He hadn't had time to do anything, and the 5 dark silhouettes had shot out from the back of his head. They then jumped through that firewall agilely, grabbed the 3 dead souls and swallowed them. Seconds later, they had finished the whole 3 dead souls. Seeing their efforts about to be fruitful, The 5 warriors had been ready to capture the dead soul. However, they suddenly felt dizzy and immediately found 5 other gray figures inside their firewall. These figures then besieged and devoured the dead souls. Yin changed his visage as he felt bad inside. Strange light flashed in Cherry's blue eyes. She instinctively looked at the back of Yan's head, her face disbelieving. The 5 devils had flown out fast. Although she stood next to Yin, she only saw 5 silhouettes dash out from behind Yin. Thus, she wasn't sure that they came from Yan's body. God damn it! The 50-some old man clenched his fists and gritted his teeth indignantly, looking at the 5 figures behind the fire wall. He scolded, "What the heck are those? Dare to take our goods. Go die." The sword in his hand suddenly gushed out a 10-meter-long fire, shooting towards the 5 devils. The other 4 reacted timely. They clenched their jaws and urged the powers of their secret weapons to attack the 5 devils. To hunt those 3 dead souls, the 5 of them had spent half a year to borrow enough secret weapons. They had also waited for more than a month in this area to find dead souls. After a hard, struggling time, they'd almost got them. It wasn't easy to back them into the corner. And now, someone had snatched the spoils of their strenuous war. How could they press down the anger? The 5 of them joined forces again. Fiery flames shot out from the flaming attribute weapons, striking toward the 5 devils. After the 5 devils had swallowed the dying dead souls, they didn't feel pleased yet. They didn't concern about the scorching flaming attack, turning back into the 5 dark, gray shadows, gathering in front of Yin and asking him to find more dead souls to fill their stomachs. Chapter 534. Gigolo? Chapter 534. Gigolo? The 5 gloomy silhouettes didn't have any real bodies, floating next to Yin like 5 gray ribbons. Cherry had a surprised face. She blankly looked at the 5 gloomy shadows. At this moment, she knew that she hadn't been dazzled. Now she knew the things that had devoured the dying dead souls came from Yin. The 5 of them had done many things, but got nothing in the end. As they were about to shout and scold, they realized that those 5 gloomy thieves seemed to have a master. The 5 of them were astounded for a while. First, they tried to sense Yin's cultivation base from afar. After they got to know that Yin had only the 3rd sky of Sky Realm cultivation base, their guts got bigger. They then came close to Yin with rage. "Kid, those 5 energy ribbons came from you, right?" Taimu, the leader, snorted with an indignant face. "Don't you know the rules? We've kept an eye on those 3 dead souls for half of a year. Do you know how much effort and crystals it costs to catch them?" The other 4, including 3 men and a young girl, all looked at him wickedly. It seemed they could take action at any minute. Taimu, a 3rd sky of Sky Realm warrior, was leading a group of the other 4 2nd sky of Sky Realm warriors. The 5 of them had joined forces and wasted a lot of their powers to gain the upper hand, which gave Yin an impression that the dead souls were tough to deal with. According to Cherry, those 3 dead souls were at a low level. If the high-level dead souls appeared, would even the spirit realm warrior able to catch them? "Kid, are you mute? I'm talking to you." Taimu shouted, his face impatient. "Give the dead souls back to us. I won't trouble you. Otherwise, don't blame me for having no mercy." "I'm sorry. I can't give them back." Yin responded, beaming a faint smile. "Things that were eaten can't be spat out. I can't return the dead souls intact." After he finished, the 5 people of Taimu's group were enraged. They clenched their jaws and gritted their teeth, as they seemed to attempt to risk their lives with his. Cherry's blue eyes sparkled. She frowned and then said, "He's our spirit hall's distinguished guest. We will be responsible for this. When we come back to the spirit hall, we'll compensate for your loss. Is it okay?" "Spirit hall?" Taimu discolored. He scrutinized her and then said, "Are you Master Xiaolin's disciple?" Cherry smiled naturally and gave him a slight nod. "Even Master Xiaolin can't bully people like that." Taimu's visage darkened. "Say it. How will you compensate us? Your spirit hall doesn't need the dead souls. Will you be able to give me 3 dead souls?" "Our spirit hall doesn't have the dead souls, but we have something to exchange for them," Cherry snorted arrogantly. Although the dead souls are rare, those 3 were at the lowest level, so their values aren't high. Don't you think that our spirit hall doesn't have anything equal to make it up for you? Harumph, if you've been strolling around the Dead Soul Mountain range, you should know about the capacity of the spirit hall. Taimu's face became better when he heard that. I know your spirit hall has big capacities. However, we only need the dead souls. There are many blacksmiths in the Precious Tool Valley. Many of them should have dead souls. When I return to the Spirit Potion Valley, I will ask my teacher to collect 3 dead souls for you guys. How does that sound? Cherry frowned impatiently. In the Dead Soul Mountain range, the alchemists and the blacksmiths had high status. When they treated the other warriors, they always felt that they were one class higher than the others. No matter how tremendous the experts were, they always needed them to refine medicines and weapons. It had happened that way for so long they eventually developed an arrogant attitude that they could control the other warriors. The alchemists of the Spirit Hall had a higher status than other alchemists. In the Spirit Potion Valley, Cherry had a good reputation too. Many people had to be obsequious to her, and not many of them dared to provoke her. This also contributed to her arrogant face when dealing with ordinary warriors. If you ensure that you can collect 3 dead souls for us, we will let it go. If not, I want to take this kid's life as our compensation. Taimu snorted. Cherry harumphed. She was about to agree with him. In her eyes, it wasn't a big deal. Shi Yin smiled while listening to their conversation, but he didn't give any opinions. However, as he heard Taimu threaten him, his face got colder, speaking up faintly. Using my life to make it up? Do you think your 3 dead souls have that high value? Well, to me, your life isn't much value as compared to those dead souls. Taimu smiled, his face sparkling with wicked light as if he was making a joke. Kid, you are living off a woman. Don't tell anyone that. Otherwise, they will look down on you. Understand? After that snatching event happened, Cherry was always the one who talked to him. In Taimu's eyes, Shi Yin was an incompetent boy who depended on Cherry. They instinctively assumed that Shi Yin had done something to seduce Cherry and make her clean up his mess. After Taimu said that, the other 4 burst out laughing with disdain on their faces. They all looked at him with the look they gave to gigolos. Is that so? Shi Yin felt funny. He shook his head, talking to Cherry. You don't need to be bothered with my stuff. You don't need to find the dead souls for them. Well, I want to see what they can do to me. He knew he was wrong when the 5 devils swallowing the weakened dead souls. He didn't want to take in for granted, so he was thinking what he should use to compensate Taimu's group. However, Taimu had spit out just bad words. His dark mind and bullish *T talks irritated Shi Yin. Thus, he decided to be AB *starred. Ah, Cherry smiled. Interest appeared on her face as she giggled, looking at him and stepping aside. Up to you. I don't want to help you either. You should solve it yourself. Anyway, be careful. Although they haven't restored their powers fully, it should be difficult if you fight alone against them. Since Jalin assigned her to bring Shi Yin to the Flying Cloud Summit, she was curious about him. The Flying Cloud Summit was the cultivating place of Rong. Among the elders of the Spirit Hall, Rong was the most mysterious person. He hadn't come to the Spirit Hall for almost 10 years. It seemed he rarely went out. As he was a high-level alchemist, Rong had connections with the strongest warriors of the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley. He was always haughty and disdained the others a lot, not even wanting to throw them a look. Since Zhali had asked her to take Shi Yin there, he seemed to confirm that Rong would definitely meet Shi Yin. This made her suspicious. She made some assumption about Shi Yin's identity and always thought that this young man was mysterious enough to make her think he wasn't as simple as he looked. Thus, when she heard Shi Yin say that he would take care of this mess himself, she didn't worry much. Actually, she was anticipating seeing how dangerous Shi Yin was through this. Kid, do you really want to court death? Taimu's face twisted, his eyes dark and gloomy. The flame of anger was burning in his heart, urging him to kill people. Court death? Shi Yin curled his lips. Are you talking about yourself? Anger flooded Taimu. He didn't hesitate anymore. The flaming sword in his hand shot out a column of light, lighting the area. After a while, hundreds of flaming swords torrentially dashed toward Shi, just like fire burning half the sky. Interesting. Shi kept a cold face. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and spurted out a cold air current, which looked like a silky white ribbon. The cold air splashed on the hundreds oncoming flaming swords. All flames were put out, revealing a real sword without the scorching flame. Its spiritual aura was frozen as well. Floating in the air, Shi extended his left arm. A cold current swiftly shot out. Beams of crystal-clear icicles darted like lightning towards that flaming sword, instantly covering it. Shi leisurely grabbed the sword and pinched it. He shook his head, smiling. No intellect. The flame power in it is too feeble. This sword can be reluctantly said to be a grade 2 profound level treasure. How could it hurt me? Taimu, we've borrowed this fire cloud sword. Don't break it. We don't want to compensate that big an amount. One of them yelled. Taimu's face changed. He scrutinized Shi again. Shi smiled, urging a bit of his negative power. The energy around him suddenly increased as a wild, sinister aura rippled from his body. Taimu was terrified. He discolored as he recognized that there was a furiously dangerous energy covering Shi. Still want to hit me? Shi was calm and steady. He threw a faint glance to the other four, then said neither hurriedly nor slowly, "You can join hands. If you think you can kill me, you can try." The other four had only the second sky of Sky Realm. Although they all heard what Shi said, they didn't dare to act rashly. "Hey you, what do you want?" "You are the one who did wrong things," said the young maid who was about 17 or 18 of that group indignantly. She was wearing a short green dress, which exposed her arms and slim waist. "Well, it's true that I did wrong things." Shi didn't deny it. He squinted while smiling, looking at Taimu. If he could keep his mouth clean, I would be a nice guy to talk with. Of course, I would make up for your loss. But it's different now. I'm sorry, I was a snobbish son of AB*T to have disdained you. Taimu assessed himself pitifully and tried to force an ugly smile. "Friend, please give back the fire cloud sword." About the dead soul. He couldn't continue. Even though the dead souls were important and he wanted them, he understood that he couldn't trouble the power that Shi had shown them. So, he didn't know if he should finish his saying or not. "Take back this fire cloud sword." Shi snorted. "If you weren't the disciples of the Radiant God cult, I wouldn't be letting you go that easy." Although these 5 Sky Realm warriors were borrowing the power of the treasures to use the flame, the energy flowing in their body was the flaming sun execution of the Radiant God cult. Shi got it crystal clear. He still had good feelings towards the Radiant God cult. However, because of his mutated martial spirit, he didn't dare to visit the Radiant God cult. Anyway, Xiaofeng and the other members of the Radiant God cult had helped him in the dark magnetic noxious mist, so he appreciated them. Swoosh! A beam of earth flame poured into the sword. The flame, which had disappeared, burned again on the sword, and it looked even more blazing. Taimu's eyes brightened, his face surprised and joyful. "Take back your fire cloud sword. Take me to the place of the dead souls. I'll help you catch 3 more. Shi assigned them coldly. Chapter 535, Precipitous. Chapter 535, Precipitous. As they heard that Shi wanted to help them catch the dead souls, the 5 people of Taimu's group didn't show that they were happy. Quite the contrary, they all wore panic-stricken faces. "It's too dangerous. We'd better not go there. We can wait for another chance to catch the dead souls. If we lose our lives, it will be too bad." Taimu shook his head continually. He seemed to have an extreme fear of that area. Shi was surprised. "What do you fear?" "Not only low-level dead souls, there should be some at high levels there as well. If we have to go there, we can't endure them for sure." Taimu smiled miserably. "Shi, you shouldn't take risks. It's easy to deal with the low-level dead souls, but it's tough to deal with the high-level ones. You shouldn't go," Cherry advised with a low voice. People living in the Dead Soul Mountain all knew that the dead souls were dangerous. If they encountered the low-level ones, They could use the rock panacea to secure their souls, preventing them from being eroded. However, the high-level dead souls could directly penetrate into the warriors' sea of consciousness to nib their souls, despite the pellet they had taken. If they weren't at spirit realm, it would be tough to defend the soul erosion effect of the high-level dead souls. Be it Cherry or Taimu, they only had the Sky Realm cultivation base. Once they faced a high-level dead soul, they couldn't save their soul from being eroded by the dead soul, even if they had the rock panacea. Once their soul started to be eroded, they couldn't urge any beam of energy to counter. At that time, they could only gawk at the dead soul feasting on their souls. Eventually, their souls would be destroyed. Thus, when she heard that the area had the high-level dead souls coming back and forth, Cherry also felt scared. She didn't want to go there. Shi Yin had the 9 Serenity Soul devouring flame and the 5 devils protecting him, so he wasn't afraid of the dead souls. When he knew Taimu's group didn't want to lead the way, he frowned, thought for a second, and then said, "All right, then you can just show me the exact direction. I'm going there alone." "You shouldn't take such risks," advised Cherry. Shi Yin's face was still cold and persistent. Taimu contemplated. Under the attraction of the dead souls, he pointed towards a shade of a mountain in the southwest. "There's a cave hiding behind a big pine. When you get there, you should be more careful. The dead souls often travel through the entrance. Inside the cave is gloomy. Of course, there are more dead souls there." As the 4 other disciples of the Radiant God cult heard that Shi Yin wanted to take the risk, they all made it clear that they didn't want to accompany him. They showed him respect, but kept a distance from him. "And you?" Shi Yin smiled at Cherry. "Are you afraid of high-level dead souls, too?" "I'm just an alchemist," nodded Cherry. She then answered him soundly. "Fighting is not my strength. Especially in a fight with dead souls, I can't be of help to you." Regarding powers and strength, the alchemists were 1 level lower than the normal warriors, and their knowledge and cultivation of soul weren't as deep as the warriors who had specialties. In the Dead Soul Mountain range, some high-level dead souls loved to trouble the alchemists. Since the endurance of the alchemist's souls was weak, when they seized the chance, they could attack the alchemist's soul easily, much easier than attacking the ordinary warriors. Shi Yin would never force Cherry if she were reluctant. He nodded while smiling. "All right, you can stay here. After I grab some dead souls, I'll come back here to find you. You should be careful." The 3 recent ones were just the low-level dead souls. It's not easy to deal with the high-level ones. Cherry could see that her advice was no use, so she could only reluctantly see him off. And, although the high-level dead souls rarely appear, it doesn't mean that there are none of them dwelling in the Dead Soul Mountain range. If you have the bad luck of meeting up the highest-level dead soul, I advise you not to trust your luck. Run away as fast as you can. Never linger. Usually, the strong dead souls can't operate too far from the evil lairs. As long as you can run fast enough, and far enough from the dead soul's evil lairs, I think the highest-level dead souls won't chase after you. So, are there any distinctive differences between the normal dead souls and the highest-level dead souls? Yeah, but we can't identify it. Cherry shook her head. According to my master, when your soul cultivation base reaches a certain level, you can use your soul consciousness to sense the differences between them. Warriors who encountered the highest-level dead souls almost have no chance to run away. 1 or 2 of them had successfully escaped, but they wouldn't want to share the details they had observed. So, the others couldn't know much. It was no help at all. Shi Yin smiled and didn't continue. He waved his hand at Cherry, then departed in the direction Taimu had shown him. It was an area covered with thick, dark gray clouds, like a gray curtain that hindered people's vision. Shi Yin released his soul consciousness and immediately found that his sensing was weakened, as he could only sense the soul fluctuations within hundreds of meters around him. His soul consciousness couldn't extend any further. Shi Yin became more alert. He slowed down his flying speed and observed here and there cautiously. He also checked the space underneath him. The valley underneath him had vibrant bushes of bone-picking grass, growing densely, just like the scythe of death, waiting to harvest people's lives. Under the shade of the mountain ahead of him, clusters of gray clouds became thicker, which obstructed his vision and soul consciousness more. Flows of cold and despondent aura flooded from ahead of him. It felt like some small, pale hands were stroking his body, making his hair rise simultaneously in fear. Taking a deep breath, he didn't hurry to intrude the place, but called the earth flame and asked it to fly in front of him, in case some dangerous dead souls would ambush him. The earth flame was like a small sun, shining a blazing light and scorching heat, which washed away the cold. It turned into a beautiful firing line, leading the way. Yin activated the star shield and the dark light shield. Covered in 2 protection layers, he quietly gathered his power, flying cautiously behind the earth flame at a moderate speed, always on alert. 15 minutes later, he arrived at the place Tai Mu mentioned, the shaded area of the mountain. A big pine tree that needed 5 people to circle appeared near the cliff. The tree looked like a giant monster under the shade of the mountain, which could ferociously swallow all creatures. Flows of sinister and cold air flooded out from the place hidden behind the pine tree. Sometimes, people could see the little luminous green spots fly out like the jack-o'-lanterns floating and disappearing into thin air. The flying speed of the earth flame suddenly became sluggish, just like an extremely slow snail. Something's there. The earth flame was quite intelligent. As it sensed something abnormal, it immediately sent him a message. "Yeah, I know there should be something. Could you sense what it is exactly?" replied Yin. "I don't know. I have never seen this kind of a creature before. They don't have a tangible body. They are sinister and hostile. They want to take everything." The earth flame was uncertain, so its description was unclear. Roar, roar, roar. The floating 5 devils suddenly became excited. They meandered over his body just like tentacles. Half of their bodies coiled around his waist, and the other half was probing around, just like the strange snakes ready to attack. Swoosh! The ice-cold flame turned into a bunch of crystal-clear white lights, shooting out from the blood vein ring. It then condensed into a block of ice crystal, covering his left arm and sending him its thoughts. They are some sorts of evil souls. I have never met such things before. They don't belong in this continent, either. This kind of evil souls are bloodthirsty, and they have a strong possessive desire. It seems they can erode creatures' souls. That's all I can sense. I'm not sure I could sense further. Yin's brows slammed together. He became more careful, adjusting his speed as slow as the earth flame. Eventually, he bypassed the pine tree and saw a cave hiding behind the root of the tree. The entrance was small, but the shutter looked big. It was really dark, and he could see nothing but the vague green light inside. The green light was despondent, which suited the place's ambience pretty well. This made people sink into an extremely depressing feeling. Whiz, whiz, whiz. The 5 devils were like demonic beasts who had smelled the fresh scent of blood, turning into a thick group of gray smoke and drilling into the cave. Yin's discolored, but he couldn't stop them timely. He sped up, dashing towards the cave. "Don't go." The earth flame and the ice-cold flame sent him their thoughts simultaneously. They seemed to be terrified. At the same time, the 5 devils, who had been eagerly entering the cave, were turning back to Yin with a faster speed. Seemed like they had seen something really intimidating. Each of them showed itself, trying to get back into his body. However, it seemed there was a strong suction force coming from the cave, trying to draw them back. They tried to struggle, but couldn't get out of the cave. In the entrance, a green light suddenly brightened fiercely. Thanks to that evil, gloomy green light, Yin finally saw what were inside the cave. Inside the unknown deep cave, countless deep green dead souls gathered. There was a dozen of them at the entrance. Entering deep inside, the dead souls there were like a green dye clutching on the stone wall. They were seeming as if they were suddenly awakened. At the deepest place of the entrance, Yin vaguely saw something like a big chunk of meat, which had many small holes drilling into the block, where blood was bleeding unceasingly. Under the chunk of meat were piles of many dead warriors. The base of the meat block extended into the center of the dead body piles, as if it were sucking some kind of energy from those corpses. The dead souls in the cave gathered around the meat block. It seemed they were guarding over it, which looked quite strange. All of a sudden, an extremely gloomy and evil aura burst out from the other end of the cave. The green light inside became even more dazzling. Gathering his spirit, Yin found that the dead souls inside the cave were connected to each other by green fibers, just like a big spider web. At the same time, when countless dead souls started swelling, they started to release the soul-erosive energy which was invisible to naked eyes, entering Yan's sea of consciousness. At that short moment, he was dragged into illusions. He saw so many dead souls nibbling, tearing his body and sucking his blood. They wanted to drag him into the cave. The earth flame burst out. The earth flame, which was as big as a palm, abruptly released a scorching flame. The sea of fire torrentially flooded into the cave. Numerous dead souls started to scream with a strange sound, as if the earth flame was burning them to the acme of pain. Seizing the chance, the 5 devils struggled harder and escaped the cave, immediately hiding themselves in Yan's sea of consciousness. The moment the 5 devils got in his sea of consciousness, Yin didn't think much, fleeing away with his max speed. Using star brilliance and electric shift, he turned into a flow of starlight, zooming over Tin Li like an arc light. Chapter 536. Unhurriedly Enter the Mountain. Chapter 536. Unhurriedly Enter the Mountain. After 15 minutes, Yin came back to where Cherry and Tai Mu's group gathered, his face bitter. "How was it? Did you catch any dead souls?" asked Tai Mu with caution. "No." Yin shook his head, his face darkened. "I met the souls there. That cave's full of dead souls, hundreds of them. Some of them should be at a high level. I'm lucky that I acted quickly. Otherwise, I could have been captured." There were so many dead souls inside the cave, and the aura they released was tremendous. When that large number of dead souls struck together, even the 9 Serenity's soul-devouring flame couldn't burn them all in a short period of time, he supposed. If he were careless and the high-level dead souls took that chance to enter his host's soul, what he gained would never make up the loss he had to bear. Hundreds of them. Cherry's face changed as she affirmed, "It should be the dead souls' evil lairs near there. Otherwise, it's impossible that so many dead souls could gather at the same spot. I think you had a bad fortune, but still were lucky enough. At least, you came back alive." "I have never seen so many dead souls like that." Tai Mu was more frightened. "Just 3 low-level dead souls, and we had to shed blood already. The 5 of us couldn't even resist 10 of them, let alone hundreds." "Well, I have no way to catch the dead souls for you. Later on, you should find Cherry and ask her." Yin rubbed his nose, feeling a little bit embarrassed. The 5 people of Tai Mu's group nodded, wearing a forced smile. Yin had used his strength to prove that he could kill them at any minute. Under this circumstance, no matter what Yin said, they had to agree. They didn't want the backfire. "All right, don't wear that bitter face. We didn't say that we won't compensate you guys. It's just the 3 low-level dead souls, not a big deal," snorted Cherry. Tai Mu and his group smiled at her. "We should go to the Flying Cloud Summit now." Cherry looked at Yin. "Yeah, let's go." 3 days later, Cherry stopped in front of a grand mountain. She eyed the mountain hiding in the clouds with a longing face. "That's the Flying Cloud Summit, the richest mountain in the Dead Soul Mountain range, with so many precious products. And only the character like Elderly deserves a summit like this. People who can visit the Flying Cloud Summit are all big men. They're the elders of the Radiant God Cult, the Pure Land, the Devil Valley, or other famous warriors of the continent. Small people like me have never had a chance to climb this mount." Yin was amazed. The Flying Cloud Summit was more than 10,000 meters high. White clouds bobbed in the middle of the mountainside. Strange animals like the white red-crowned crane were flying here and there. Heaven and earth aura here was dense and pure, which comforted people. From the foot of the mountain, they could see that the Flying Cloud Summit had many green patches where they grew spiritual herbs. There were so many herbs and of various types that it dazzled people. A rugged mountain path led directly to the Flying Cloud Summit. In front of the gateway stood a giant green stone, which had some big old-style calligraphy words. "No unauthorized entry. Let's go. We should climb up now." Yin smiled. While he was still talking, his body had already floated in the sky, attempting to fly directly to the peak. Don't! Cherry stopped him. Yin was bewildered, looking at her, having no clue. There are many banned things in this flying cloud summit. Although there are no barriers in this mount, we can't just fly there directly like that. Cherry explained him with a respectful face. This is our Spirit Hall Grand Elders cultivating place. When the elders of the Radiant God cult or the Pure Land come here, even they have to mount that path. Anyone who flies up directly will violate the rules here. Elderly will never meet them. So, he has a high price. Of course, Cherry told him with a serious countenance. The Flying Cloud Summit is the holy land of our Spirit Hall. Small people like us don't even have the right to come and say hello. Even if it is my teacher, without the prior permission of Elderly, he doesn't dare to come here. Since we are small people, we should follow the rules. Pausing for a while, she continued, Are you confident that Elderly will meet you? If you are unsure, don't do rash things. Elderly doesn't like to be disturbed. Moreover, he has recently told us that without his order, no one is allowed to bother him, including the experts of the Pure Land and the Radiant God cult. Don't worry. If he doesn't want to meet me, I'll leave. Yin smiled. If I'm not sure about that, how can I go there and claim shame on myself? Having heard him say so, Cherry could relax. She nodded and said, All right, you should go there. I'll wait for you here. Anyway, my task was to bring you here. It's accomplished now. I have no other tasks. Cherry was a bit disappointed and somewhat fascinated at the same time. She looked at the peak in the clouds as if she was waiting for something. Yin couldn't help but laugh as he understood that she was waiting for him to invite her to go with him. Let's go. It's been hard for you to take me here. If you don't mind, we should go there together, shall we? Cherry's eyes brightened, her face joyful. She giggled. You are inviting me to go with you? Yeah, thank you. Seems you still have a conscience. Don't babble. Let's go. Yin took the lead to the mountain. Along the way to the peak, they saw many spiritual farms where rare and precious herbs were planted. Yin didn't know about more than half of them. Cherry's blue eyes sparkled as she greedily eyed at the spiritual herbs along their way. She couldn't help but compliment. Elder Lee's worth the Grand Elder of the Spirit Hall. He's like a god. Only the great alchemists like him could grow these spiritual herbs. Look at this spirit-breaking grass. They say that it only grows in the snowy mountain. This igniting fruit can only bear fruits in the wall slit of the magma rock. These spiritual herbs require the extreme conditions to grow. I don't know what method Elder Lee's used to nurture them in the Flying Cloud Summit. Cherry didn't talk much on the way they got there. However, when they arrived the Flying Cloud Summit, she was like a radio at the correct frequency and couldn't stop speaking. She showed him the herbs and complimented non-stop. She idolized Zheng Rong so much she regretted she couldn't make him her teacher. Jia Lin's your teacher. Do you want to betray your school? Yin teased her. If Elderly makes me his disciple, I think my teacher will be proud of me too. He won't stop me, but do his best to have a good relationship with me. Cherry wore a fascinating countenance. Strange light twinkled in her blue eyes while she was smiling. Yin didn't bother to talk with her. He felt that alchemists were the sort of people one couldn't reason with. Each of them was odd enough. So, no one dreams about those spiritual fields. On the way to the peak, Yin didn't see anyone watching over the fields. As he was curious, he asked the girl, Who dares to dream of the spiritual farm of the Flying Cloud Summit? Cherry looked at him as if she were looking a dummy. Elder Lee's the peak alchemist of the whole Dead Soul Mountain range. All alchemists respect and admire him. The great elders of the Radiant God cult, the Pure Land, or the Devil Temple have to be servile to him. If they mess up with Elderly, it's no different from creating grudge with half of the forces in the Grace Mainland. Who dares, you say? If they are invincible experts, they won't lay their eyes on these herbs. The low-level thieves don't dare to come. So, even if they don't set any barriers here, it's safe enough. Yin blamed himself for the stupid question. During the mountaineering, Yin didn't say any useless words. Half a day later, after they had passed hundreds of spiritual fields, Yin and Cherry were about to reach the peak of the Flying Cloud Summit. At this moment, A clear but cold voice arose although there were no other people on the road. Intruders, who are you? Haven't you heard the notice? Within 3 years, no one can enter the Flying Cloud Summit. Didn't you bring your brain with you? Cherry reddened embarrassedly. She bowed her head, not daring to answer because she was frightened. Shi Yan's eyes lit up. He laughed slightly. Lin Xiaomei, long time no see. Well, do you want to stop your friends who have crossed a long way to get here at the door? He recognized the one who was talking with him from a secret place somewhere was Lin Yiqi, who used to visit the Endless Sea. The little girl with a big bosom was Yi Changfeng's older sister. You are, that be *starred Shi Yan? Lin Yiqi contemplated for a while. Seemed she was trying to remember the identity of the intruders. Later on, she smiled charmingly. Well, friends from the far land? You be 8-starred. Weren't you staying in the Endless Sea? Why did you leave that place and come to the Grace mainland? Why are you here? In the middle of the giggling, a thick magma dike split open. Lin Yiqi appeared in a white light. She looked at him from above and chuckled. You're strong indeed. Well, since you can come here, you should have some good tricks. Shi Yan felt a little bit funny. Yi Changfeng gave me the token. He told me to visit the Spirit Potion Valley and show them the token. They would take me here. All right, where is my buddy Yi Changfeng? Oh, I almost forgot. Lin Yiqi spatted her head. She snorted. Don't mention that little be *starred. He seized the chance our teacher was secluding and cultivating to sneak out and have fun somewhere. I haven't seen him for almost 1 year. Our teacher said that after he finished his cultivating period this time, he would give him a good lesson. I want to meet elderly. Is it convenient? Shi Yan's face was solemn. I have something I want to ask him. Lin Yiqi's expression showed that it was a bit difficult. Our teacher is still cultivating. He said that no one is allowed to bother him. Well, if it's you, I can notify him. But I'm not sure he could meet you immediately. Shi Yan smiled and nodded. Okay, get in. Have some tea and take a rest. Lin Yiqi waved her hand. Then her look shifted to Cherry. Who's that? Your woman? TSK, you fella are a real womanizer. Wherever you go, you have pretty chicks to be your company. Such a be *starred. Cherry blushed, throwing Shi Yan a strange look, shaking her head to explain. No, I'm not his woman. I am from the Spirit Hall. Spirit Hall? Lin Yiqi's face got colder. She answered arrogantly. Sorry, this is not the place you should be. You should return using the old way. Although she's from the Spirit Hall, she's my woman too. Don't talk too much. I'm tired. This trip has been long enough. You should bring me tea quickly. Shi Yan said with a natural face, smiled, then pulled Cherry's small hand, walking toward Lin Yiqi. Cherry reddened. She tried to wiggle a bit. However, since she had a desire for this holy land, the Flying Cloud Summit, she didn't struggle too much as she let Shi Yan grab her hand, walking forward with her head bent down. You should have said it earlier. Lin Yiqi rolled her eyes at him and then let them pass. I know it. You be *starred aren't a good man. You tease the flowers and the moon everywhere. Never have a moment to calm down. My little brother told me that you weren't a good guy in the dark magnetic noxious mist too. You seem to have an ambiguous relationship with a woman of the Aok family. Motherf *Kerr. That kid has slandered me. Shi Yan wore an angry expression, scolding the other. Chapter 537. Li Zheng Rong. Chapter 537. Li Zheng Rong. Inside the Flying Cloud Summit's mountainside, there were many large stone chambers that could be seen. Multicolored gems were inlaid on the wall, illuminating the whole room as bright as daylight. Although they were in the mountainside, it didn't look dark at all. Air flowed everywhere, together with the dense spiritual qi. Strange and miraculous herbs were present in the stone chambers, kept in special containers. There were some tools holding the fresh, green leaves, and they seemed to be still growing. There was a spacious room as big as a basketball court, matted with thick rugs, where an incense burner was exuding fragrant smoke. The room had its wall carved with many magical spiritual formation and spells. Different colored flows of spiritual qi were moving slowly inside the formations, looking like some snake slithering. Shi Yin and Cherry were seated in this large stone room. Lin Yiqi gave them some good tea with a smile. Hey, you, why do you want to visit the Dead Soul Mountain? I heard that your endless sea has had a big change. Why don't you stay there? The threats in the endless sea were solved. Within 100 years, members of the Fourth Demon Area and the Seven-Layered Underworld won't come back to the endless sea. The sea tribes are fine, too. I don't need to worry about them. Shi Yin smiled as he sipped his tea. And you? When we were in the middle of the dark magnetic noxious mist, why did you disappear? I was going with my teacher, so I didn't have time to visit those two exotic lands. Lin Yiqi's beautiful eyes brightened as she said suddenly, I heard that you had a big catch in the exotic lands of the dark magnetic noxious mist. Could you show me some? Let me get the profit at your expense too. Well, Elderly takes a good care of you. Why do you bother with my small toys? Don't tease me. Shi Yin shook his head, his face serious. Hey, please notify Elderly, tell him that I want to ask him for a favor. Hearing him say so, Lin Yiqi didn't continue to be lengthy. She nodded and said, Make yourself home. I'm going to report to my teacher. Yes. Lin Yiqi swayed her body, entering a bright-lit channel which led into the mountain wall. She disappeared shortly. Shi Yin took in his tea while watching the walls with great interest. Sometimes, he shifted his eyes to Cherry, looking pensive. After they got in this room, Cherry hadn't spoken a word as she put all of her attention to the spiritual formation on the walls. Her eyes brightened, as if she had found the hidden treasures. She was trying to memorize them all, not wanting to leave even a single formation. Cough, cough. Shi Yin let out a light cough. After he successfully received Cherry's attention, he beamed a faint smile and then probed. You seem to be interested in those formations a lot. Do they give you any clues for your medicine refining job? Cherry's soft body shivered. Her blue eyes twinkled beautifully as she nodded earnestly. Of course, those spiritual formations are the ways the alchemists transport their soul consciousness, and that's how the medicine revolves during the process. They include the most mysterious intent domain of an alchemist. If I can comprehend the subtle features of this magical formation, my attainment will enter a new stage immediately. Shi Yin was amazed. Cherry explained him quickly. When the alchemists refine pellets, we have to pour our soul consciousness into the cauldron, using it to carve the spiritual spell that activates the herbs and promotes their efficacy. A magical formation or spell is the most important link in refining medicine. If this link doesn't work or fails, even if you have good ingredients, you are just wasting them. When an alchemist understands the formation or the spell thoroughly, not only can he save the herbs, but also increase the power of the medicinal efficacy of the pellet. Thus, an excellent alchemist should have a deep understanding about the marvelous formations with a high realm. So, what's your realm? Shi Yin asked with surprise. Me? Cherry forced a smile, shaking her head. I'm bad. Even my teacher Xiaolin doesn't know many formations, and he couldn't understand them thoroughly either. The alchemists like Elderly are familiar with the spiritual formations and spells, which helps them promote the effect of the pellets to the peak. After Cherry finished her explanation, she continued gazing at the spiritual formations on the wall, not caring about him anymore. People who could meet Li Zheng were all the peak warriors of the Grace Mainland, or the excellent alchemists. Even Xiaolin hadn't had the chance to visit this place. It was hard for Cherry to have this chance. She was willing to let Lin Yiqi misunderstand her, so she could have a chance to look at those formations. To alchemists who were passionate in refining medicines, the spiritual formations on the walls here were the biggest treasure. It was similar to the martial techniques of the warriors. As long as she could understand them, her career would be widened and brighter. If she could make it smooth, she could enter a new realm as well. Shi Yin wasn't an alchemist, so it was hard for him to understand her persistence. Seeing her focus on studying the magical formation, he didn't bother her more, just letting her absent-mindedly look at the wall. 1 hour later, Lin Yiqi got back to the room. She stood at the entrance of the channel, waving at Shi Yin to signal him to come alone. Shi Yin stood up, and he noticed that Cherry didn't realize his activity as she was still paying her full attention to the wall. While smiling, He tiptoed towards Lin Yiqi as he was afraid that he would bother the girl. Then, he walked with Lin Yiqi into the quiet stony cave. After they had left for a while, Lin Yiqi cocked her head and rolled her eyes at him. You really care about that woman, right? Not only you took her here, but also don't want to disturb her. Spit it out honestly. What is the relationship between you two? She's my woman. I told you, right? Devil buys it. When you took her hand, she was startled. It isn't natural at all. Do you think that I didn't see that? So, why didn't you comment at that time? Because I had to give you face. Be asterisk starred. You don't appreciate me at all, do you? No. Thank you. Then tell me, what's the relationship between you two? Nothing. The spirit hall assigned her to take me to the Flying Cloud Summit. She took care of me along the way. She wanted to visit the place, so I played the good guy's role and gave her a hand. Lin Yiqi was naive and innocent. It seemed she was interested in the affectionate relationship between men and women. Along the way there, she continually asked him about it. She even probed Shi Yan's private affairs, asking him how many women he had been with. This irritated Shi Yan. As they had just finished halfway, Shi Yan decided to zip his mouth. No matter what she inquired, he kept his mouth shut. Lin Yiqi clenched her teeth, rolling her eyes at him angrily. I'm just curious. Can't you satisfy my little curiosity for a while? You know, my evil master controls me tightly. That brat Yi Changfeng often has chances to get out, but I don't have his big guts. I'm lonely here. It's so boring. Shi Yan was surprised for a while. Your teacher doesn't allow you to go out? In my realm, when he doesn't ask me to go out, I'm forbidden. Lin Yiqi drooped her head, her face dispirited. Wait until you reach the third sky of Sky Realm, and your alchemist attainment reaches the profound level. I'll let you go out for 3 years. A leisurely, friendly laughter came from behind the wall in front of them. The wall then split open, revealing a tunnel decorated with gems. All of them were sparkling dazzlingly. Hurry up, the evil old man heard us. Lin Yiqi tucked her tongue out, speeding her pace swiftly forward. Shi Yan followed her. Inside a spacious cave, he saw more than 10 cauldrons with different sizes and colors. Mysterious patterns were carved on the cauldrons that looked more like the tadpole scripts. More than 10 cauldrons occupied half of the space in the cave. Outside the place, there were piles of bottles, jars, and containers which were full of spiritual herbs. In the center of the cauldron area lied a fat man with a lazy appearance. He was fat like a small mountain of meat. The man squinted his small eyes, beaming a smile that seemed to be of no harm to any creature. He smiled at Shi Yan, then slightly raised his arm. Little buddy, you are Shi Yan. Thank you for your drop of life original fluid. Haha, you came from the endless sea. You're my distinguished guest. Li Zheng moved his body, reluctantly leaning against a big cauldron to sit up. He smiled awkwardly. I'm too fat. It's hard to move, and I'm lazy to exercise too. If I can sit, I won't stand. If I can lay down, I won't sit. Many years ago, I used my body to test the drugs I refined. At that time, my realm wasn't high enough, so among the medicines I refined, many of them didn't meet the standard. I took them too much and got sick. Now, I'm getting fatter over time. Big headache. Elderly, just make yourself comfortable. No need to mind me. Shi Yan smiled friendly. He then walked leisurely to each of the cauldrons to take a look. After that, he asked the fat man with great surprise. These cauldrons show your progress of refining, right? Light shimmered from Li Zhengrong's small eyes while his fat face trembled. He laughed cheerily. Why you ask so? He seemed to study Shi Yan, as if the young man had just touched his interest. His small eyes became livelier. When elderly refined pellets those old years, I guess you would use the biggest cauldron, Shi Yan said with a solemn face, walking to that cauldron. At that time, your realm wasn't high enough, which made you dependent on the tools. And your knowledge of refining pellets wasn't sufficient. That's why you needed a big cauldron to carve the formation to promote the efficacy of the herbs. As your realm improved, your understanding of spiritual formation and the attainment became more brilliant. Later on, You realized that the cauldron was just a container during the medicinal refining process. Then, you didn't use the big cauldrons anymore, but started to comprehend a higher Upanishad of refining method. Since that time, you'd started to use the smaller cauldrons. When Elder Li's realm reached the peak, you didn't need the cauldron anymore. You only used the fiery flame in your body to refine the earth-shaking pellets. At that moment, Elder Li was no longer dependent on using cauldrons. You've become a great master. Naturally, you don't need to use the external tools anymore. Now, you are using your body as the cauldron, your soul consciousness to be the leading medicine to gather and condense the heaven and earth aura, which could promote the efficacy of the herbs to the acme. This is the top realm of medicinal refining. Kid, you do have good knowledge. Li Zhengrong's small eyes brightened. He nodded continually, trying to clap his fat hands. He seemed to reassess Shi Yin. No wonder why that buddy Chang Feng told me you aren't ordinary. Although our little A** Shoal's a bit stubborn, he still has good knowledge. As I've met you today, I finally get it. Shi Yin smiled modestly. I'm not going to go around the bush. I'm coming here today to ask you to help me take a friend of mine back from the Pure Land. I can use the life original fluid to exchange. Li Zhengrong was astounded for a while. Eventually, he sat upright and said seriously, no matter what you offer, the Pure Land won't return your friend. I'm sure about this. Chapter 538. She's really great. Chapter 538. She's really great. Shi Yan's face darkened in the middle of the room full of cauldrons. Lin Yiqi was astounded. She hesitated for a while, then asked, Master, last time you told us that the life original fluid is very precious. Isn't it enough to exchange for that woman? Nothing can exchange for her, Li Zhengrong sighed. 1 year ago, Elder Jin Chuang of the Pure Land came to me. He asked me to help them refine the levitating immortal pill for that little girl. It's not easy to refine the levitating immortal pill. It needs so many types of spiritual herbs. Many of them aren't available. They need to search for them in other regions. They are scarce in our divine great land, too. Levitating immortal pill? Lin Yiqi wore a surprised face. She tucked her tongue out. The Pure Land's really a big spender. Is the levitating immortal pill precious? Shi Yin frowned. The levitating immortal pill is the pill to enhance the profound qi. 1 pellet of the levitating immortal pill can make a first sky of Sky Realm warrior earn the profound qi's density of a second sky of Sky Realm. The levitating immortal pill needs 97 rare herbs of medium grade and a rare water spirit. The process is really complicated, and the failure possibility is high too. A cauldron of levitating immortal pill with abundant herbs, refined by a sacred level alchemist, could produce only 5 pellets with the number of herbal ingredients required for 100 pellets, explained Lin Yiqi. Shi Yin was dumbstruck. Putting ingredients for 100 pellets, but it could produce only 5. It was tough to refine the levitating immortal pill, indeed. At that time, I asked Jin Chuang what did they need the levitating immortal pill for. He told me they wanted to improve the strength of that little girl. Since my relationship with Jin Chuang isn't shallow, he told me that the reincarnation martial spirit of that little girl has the soul memories of some previous generations. They took the girl to the Pure Land and sensed. Finally, they found that little girl's soul memories have the memories of an ancestor of the Pure Land who lived in the Antiquity era, said Li Zhengrong. Shi Yan's face changed. I heard Yi Chang Feng say that she has just a soul imprint of an ancestor of the Pure Land in her memory. Is it true? It's the memory of the latest generation. Li Zhengrong took a deep breath. Seniors of the Pure Land usually have the spirit realm cultivation base. They aren't too dangerous. However, the ancestors of the Pure Land in the Antiquity era had the God King realm cultivation base. That little girl's realm and powers aren't high enough to restore all the memories of that ancestor. That's why Jin Chuang's group had to rush and be excited at the same time. They really want to increase her strength. Pausing for a while, Li Zhengrong continued. Once that little girl reaches the true God realm, she will gradually recall the martial Upanishads of the realm related to that ancestor in the Antiquity era. As long as she has enough essence qi to support, her cultivating path will have no significant obstacles. She will go directly to the God King realm. At last, when she reaches the true God realm, she can remember the Upanishads of the techniques of the God-King realm warrior. At that time, she will become the most precious treasure of the Pure Land that can benefit all their warriors. Shi Yan's brows slammed together. He kept silent. I can only say that that little girl's too lucky, and her good fortune's boundless. You should feel happy for her. Those people from the Pure Land had intended to use the secret treasures to help that ancestor's soul replace her soul directly. However, thanks to her fate, no one dares to do that in the Pure Land. Now, she can keep her soul and use the properties of the Pure Land to cultivate and break through with unimaginable speed non-stop. That Pure Land's ancestor's soul won't replace hers? No, it won't. You can relax. It's been tens of thousands of years. That ancestor's soul will soon be scattered. The only things that remain are the deep understandings of the martial arts. So, your little girl can keep her soul, and she can seize the chance to thrive directly. Shi Yan was stunned, but now he could relax his tense nerves. All experts of the Pure Land are protecting her as if she's their most precious treasure. All cultivating resources in that sect are available for her. As long as she can absorb the pellets, which could increase her essence chi, they will give them all to her. They need her to progress to the highest realm within the shortest time. Rong sighed, then shook his head. That little girl's so lucky that I have no words to comment. When Jin Chuang came here, she was at the second sky of Sky Realm. It's been 1 year, and with the Pure Land's resources, I think they have some other alchemists to refine the levitating immortal pellet for her. I think she should be in the spirit realm now. With the sufficient supply of pellets to increase her essence chi, and the advantage of having no obstacles hinder her way, she will progress significantly daily. Shi Yan was frightened. He had assumed that his cultivating speed was the extreme one in this world, but now Rong had told him that Xia Xian Yan's progress was much faster than his. He and Xia Xian Yan were two extreme beings indeed. On his cultivating path, he didn't need to worry about the supply of essence chi. He just needed the essence chi of the dead warriors after slaughtering them to be purified by his mysterious martial spirit. His essence chi would increase unceasingly. His essence chi was always ahead of his realm. Xia Xian Yan's case was different. She didn't need to worry about her realm. What she had to care was to make sure that her essence chi could match up with her realm, which would help her break through constantly, without having the bottleneck like other warriors. Her way would be straight and smooth. One wouldn't need to worry about the amount of essence chi, and the other wouldn't be bothered with the realm. The cultivating path of these two was marvelous indeed. You don't need to worry about her. To her, staying in the Pure Land only benefits her. No harm at all. All experts of the Pure Land treat her as the most precious treasure of theirs. She's the queen on the Pure Land's chessboard now. If she continues to thrive this way, one day, she will become the paragon of the Pure Land, and the future master of the divine Great Land. She will reach the God King realm at that time. I think it won't take more than 50 years later, Rong admired. Weil was stunned. 50 years. She needs only 50 years? The Pure Land is constantly collecting the pellets to increase her cultivation base. She doesn't need to worry about that. Just take the chance and take them in. Well, that little girl's a little monster. Rong shook his head, his face longing. Shi Yan, your pressure is huge. Lin Yiqi was stunned for a long while before she spoke up again. That woman will become the peerless expert of the whole continent. As her good friend, have you prepared yourself well? Will you feel small? Will you feel that you don't deserve her? It's normal, I guess. There's no one in the divine Great Land can be paired with her. TSK, hold your emotion and go with the flow. Shi Yan felt big pressure, indeed, but he was both happy and anxious at the same time. He had never thought that Xia Xian Yan could have a sudden opportunity. When he had first entered the Endless Sea, he had told her firmly that he would surpass her soon to be with her officially. Well, from the current situation, this process would be lengthened to infinity. It was uncertain whether he could achieve his dream in this life or not. Rong and Lin Yiqi didn't talk more, looking at him with sympathy in their eyes. In fact, they all knew the relationship between Shi Yan and Xia Xian Yan. To men, when they're women, the ones they had their hearts and souls fallen for, had reached the sky with a single bounce and became the strongest warrior, they would have to face a huge pressure. If his will weren't firm enough, he would find it hard to continue to break through due to this kind of pressure. Shi Yan's eyes lit up. He pondered for a while, then asked, "Can I meet her in the Pure Land?" "They will not allow it." Rong shook his head. "This period is the critical time for her to grow up. The Pure Land won't allow anyone to disturb her. I suggest that you shouldn't meet her at this time. On the one hand, it will increase your pressure. On the other hand, it can affect her spirit and soul too. No matter it's for you or for her, it's better not to meet up at this time." Shi Yan felt lost. He sighed, unable to cry or smile. It was a big pressure indeed. "Master, the dead souls often cooperate these days. I've met a lot of them in the region. They are so many. Do you think they have a leader now?" Lin Yiqi was kind enough to change the topic, as she was afraid that Shi Yan would feel hurt more. "They often cooperate?" Rong's small eyes flashed. "How often?" Yeah. When I came here, I found a cave where many dead souls gathered. There should be hundreds of them. I'm sure there's a high-level dead soul behind the scene." Shi Yan walked out of his lost being and intervened them. "Hundreds of dead souls." Rong's visage changed. "So many of them there like that?" "Yeah, in a cave. The dead souls stick on the walls were as dense as spider webs. Deep inside the cave lied a chunk of meat. It was dark green too. Its roots pierced into the dead bodies of so many warriors. I think it was sucking the nutrition from those bodies. It looked so strange," explained Shi Yan. Rong shot up from his seat. It was the first time he wore a frightened countenance. "You saw a dark green block of meat? It was sucking the nutrition from the warriors' bodies? Are you sure?" "Of course, I'm sure." "Not good." Rong was panicked. His face changed. "Big problem." "What's happened? Where did you find them?" "Under the shade of a mountain." "Go. Take me there. Immediately." "Why you are so hurried? We can't waste even a second." Rong shouted, then assigned Lin Yiqi. "You shouldn't stay here. Go to the Spirit Potion Valley and report what Shi Yan had said to the people of the Spirit Hall. Ask them to notify the other elders." "What's wrong?" "Don't ask too much. Do what I said first." Rong acted as if he had a fire burning his butt. He talked to Shi Yan urgently. "Take me there. We'll go immediately. I'm not sure if we can seize the chance." Shi Yan felt suspicious. He didn't know what was going on, but from Rong's complexion, he knew something terrible was about to happen. At this moment, he was more determined and didn't say any extra words. He nodded to Rong and flew out of the flying cloud summit at the max speed, heading towards the cave where the dead souls had gathered. Chapter 539. Great changes are approaching. Chapter 539. Great changes are approaching. As soon as Rong left the flying cloud summit, he couldn't wait and grabbed Shi Yan, then shot out at a speed as fast as the light of the galaxy streamer. It was a bit rough to Shi Yan, making his breathing quite difficult. At this moment, Shi Yan knew that Rong had lied to him the whole time, saying that his body was too fat to move conveniently. Although Rong hadn't broken through to the true God realm, once he ran at max speed, he was like a meteor chasing after the moon, extremely fast. He and Cherry had spent 3.5 days to reach the flying cloud summit from the Dead Souls Cave without a rest stop along the way. However, it took Rong only 2 hours in bringing him to the target place, the cave where the Dead Souls gathered, under his navigation. Right when the fat Rong arrived, he took out an emerald armor, which looked like a stream of water flowing around his outfit. Green waves were rippling on it. This was a sacred-level secret treasure with water attribute. After he got into the cave under the shade of the mountain, Rong's small eyes got colder. His face darkened as he said glumly, "We're late?" The cave was empty. No dead souls remained. Neither did a single blade of grass. The green, that looked sinister and gloomy on the wall, were all gone too. Only the cold, strange aura stayed. It's been just 3 days. Shi Yan walked to the deepest area of the cave, searching carefully. He pointed at a concave area. "I saw the green meat block here. I'm sure that I wasn't hallucinating. Li Zhang didn't doubt him as he nodded. I trust you? His brows furrowed tightly, revealing a seriousness he had never revealed before. He walked back and forth inside the cave many times. His small eyes were as bright as two dazzling diamonds in this gloomy cave. Afterward, Li Zhang exhaled begrudgingly. Big troubles? What has happened? Shi Yin didn't understand. There must be a big change in those dead souls. Li Zhang turned around, contemplated for a while, and then explained, 40 years ago, a formidable dead soul had appeared in the dead soul's evil lairs. We had joined hands with the Pure Land, the Devil Valley, and the Radiant God cult to kill that dead soul. In that battle, many spirit realm experts from the Pure Land, the Devil Valley, and the Radiant God cult died. Their souls were dragged into the dead soul's evil lairs. A warrior of the Devil Valley, thanks to his bizarre soul technique, could endure for a short while in the evil lair. Before he lost his mind, he reminded us not to let the dead soul give birth to an entity at any cost. At his last moment before turning into a dead soul, he said that the dead souls have some secret method that uses the warrior's dead bodies to nurture their entity. Once a high-level dead soul could have a body, its power would increase tremendously, and its cultivation base would be enhanced several times stronger. Shi Yin discolored. The Sky Realm warriors can't deal with the typical dead souls. A relatively high-level dead soul can toy the spirit realm experts in its hands. Regarding this max-level dead soul, only the true God Realm warriors can save their souls from the erosive power. If you want to destroy it, you have to use the secret treasures with the lightning attribute. When the max-level dead souls have a body, they will be complete. At that time, they won't need to depend on the dead soul's evil lair anymore. They can leave the evil lair, and it will be a big catastrophe of the Dead Soul Mountain range. This can even spread to the Divine Great Land. Li Zhang was anxious and kept sighing. Shi Yin kept silent, not saying a word. The Dead Soul Mountain range will have a big battle, in which I don't know how many would die. Sigh, too bad I haven't entered the true God realm yet. I still need one more year. This event has happened before time. I got it, Shi Yin replied naturally. Yeah, at first, you can go to the Spirit Potion Valley or the Precious Tool Valley, but you shouldn't stay there for long. Li Zhang was worried as if he had a flame burning his heart and didn't dilly-dally. I should prepare immediately. About that little girl, you shouldn't be hurried. It's useless to be anxious, too. I think you can wait for the right time. Even if you don't find her, she will come to you. You two still have time to meet. Then, Li Zhang left quickly. It seemed he wanted to check the caves around the area to see if he could find the gathering point of the Dead Souls. The Dead Soul Mountain range had almost 1,000 mountains, situated in a vast area. Not all the Dead Souls were stupid. When they knew they should hide their auras, they would be more careful. Shi Yin thought his search would be negative, and that he couldn't find the new gathering spot of the Dead Soul in just a short time. After Li Zhang left, Shi Yin didn't linger. He pondered, then decided to return to the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley. He could ask for more details and traces there to keep track of this strange event. 3 days later, he came back to the Spirit Potion Valley, but didn't go to the Spirit Hall right away. He made a tour around the Spirit Potion Valley and then headed to the Precious Tool Valley. The Precious Tool Valley and the Spirit Potion Valley were neighbors. There were shops that sold the materials for forging treasure around the place. People in the Precious Tool Valley were all blacksmiths. In the Precious Tool Valley, they also had the same structure as the Spirit Hall, which was called the Tool Hall, managed by some sacred-level blacksmiths of the Dead Soul Mountain range. After he arrived the Precious Tool Valley, he visited each store to find some strange spirit crystals. Little buddy, you've been wandering half a day already, but you haven't bought anything yet. You don't like anything in my store? In a ware shop named Universe, the owner was a third sky of Nirvana realm warrior with messy hair, a red nose, and opaque, squinted eyes, just like he was still sleepy-headed. The owner had looked at Shi Yin for half a day. Eventually, he couldn't help but ask him, "Hey shopkeeper, are there any blacksmiths in the Precious Tool Valley who know how to use the magical formation?" Shi Yin leaned against a shelf, smiled, and asked him, "What's that formation?" asked the owner. Teleporting type. The shop owner was astounded. Afterward, he smiled oddly and said, "Friend, have you just arrived the Dead Soul Mountain range?" "Yes. The blacksmiths who could build the teleporting formation are really amazing. In the Dead Soul Mountain range, there are several who know how to make this formation. If you want to find them, go to the tool hall. I think the elders should know something about it. Anyway, it cost a fortune to build the teleportation formation. First, you will need the nether crystal. I hear that the nether crystals exist only in some space cracks. They are so rare, really tough to find." Yin was startled. That year, when he had entered the Chasm Abyss battlefield through the teleport formation, he had seen the scenes changing unceasingly. That ancient teleportation array had left a deep impression on him. In the Endless Sea, the Three God Sect and the Yang family also had a small-scale teleportation formation. Although the distance was limited, Yin knew how important it was to a strong force. He wanted to build a big teleportation formation that could connect the Ice Emperor City and possibly forming the connection with the Endless Sea in the future. That's why he wanted to find an excellent blacksmith to buy a teleportation formation. From the shopkeeper's explanation, he got to know that the blacksmiths who could build the array were rare. He bid farewell to the shop owner and then spent another 2 days in the Precious Tool Valley to ask for the information from other blacksmiths. But he couldn't find anyone who knew the method to build the formation. All the blacksmiths he had asked told him that only the elders of the tool hall knew how to build the teleportation formation. When he told him that the formation he wanted to build should be able to teleport through the sea, the blacksmiths looked at him as if they were looking at a monster. They then told him clearly that even the elders of the tool hall could only build small-scaled formations, which could transport to 10,000 li at max. Beyond this distance, it would be quite tough. Yin was totally disappointed. He then borrowed a small gravitational room in the tool hall to train his body, trying to drain the mysterious energy in his muscles in the 40 times heavier gravity room. He hoped that he could maximize his bearing capacity. Time flew fast, as 10 days passed like a blink of an eye. He had exhausted himself in the gravitational room. Thoughts flickered in his head as he recalled the experience in blacksmithing of the blacksmith from the ice-cold flames memories. The related secrets of refining treasures were moving in his head like three-dimension pictures. After searching for half a day, he still couldn't find any memories related to the teleportation formation. He felt dispirited as he opened his eyes wider while sinking into his thought. Blacksmith's secrets of success. After a while, Yin's eyes brightened. He shot up from his seat. He suddenly recalled the ancient book he had gotten from the mysterious exotic land, The Blacksmith's Secrets of Success. That mysterious land had so many rare treasures. In the center of the 2 galaxies, he got that book, which had some seal he couldn't open. It seemed the Blacksmith's Secrets of Success was really old and mysterious. Perhaps it would have the method to build the ancient transmission formation. The ancient teleport formation was a big-sized one, as it could transport things over a big distance. If he had the method to build the formation, he would gather the materials and do it himself. His mind flickered and the blacksmith's secrets of success flew out from the storage ring, floating in front of him. The 4 big words written in ancient calligraphy on the cover sparkled. He reached out his left hand and gently put it on the blacksmith's secret of success. A vehement shiver rippled from the book, creating a strong force that pushed his hand aside. He then urged his soul consciousness. However, he was pushed back by a soul energy before he could reach the book. It repeated several times, and he still didn't know how to access the book. You can't access this thing simply. This book comes from the Antiquity era. You need to use the soul dividing technique, which also comes from the Antiquity time, to open the book. The ice-cold flame turned into a beautiful white light, emerging from the blood vein ring and sending him its thoughts. Chapter 540. Soul Dividing. Chapter 540. Soul Dividing. Soul Dividing Technique. It was a secret technique of the experts in the Antiquity time. This technique would divide the host soul into parts. When they forged the puppet, they would put a part of their host soul into it. This would make the puppet have the soul and memory imprints of the owner, which would help it to perform as marvelously as its master. The secret weapons of a great blacksmith or a warrior required a part of the soul pouring in to be opened. As long as he had his soul enter the tools and the books, he could officially control the tools and read the books. It wasn't hard to learn how to divide the host's soul. However, most of the techniques were lost. Only some members of the old factions knew how to do that. The ice-cold flame showed itself, and then lectured Yin about the subtle features of the soul-dividing technique. Then continued, "This book should come from the Antiquity era too. If you want to access it, you have to divide your soul and put your part into the book. Otherwise, you can't see the miraculous contents inside." Yin was surprised. He pondered, then smiled. "Do you know the soul-dividing technique?" "A little bit." "Tell me." "Well, I just know the surface of the technique, which can't help you refine a clone. But to open this old book, it's not too difficult." "Then don't babble more." "All right." The ice-cold flame regarded him. It thought for a while, then connected its soul to Yin's. Then, the flame found the secret techniques related to the soul-dividing method, turning them into the memory fluctuations and transmitting them into Yin's head. To practice the soul-dividing technique, at first, he needed to train his host soul, making it disappear and then reorganize. During the time the host soul got mutated, he would use a special method to draw a beam of the soul. That beam then would be nurtured in the sea of consciousness, using the power of the soul consciousness to keep it warm. After a while, it would grow into a feeble hollow soul. The hollow soul wasn't the host soul, as it was just a projection of the latter. So, it didn't have the attainments of the host soul. When the hollow soul was destroyed, it didn't affect the host soul. However, it had a connection with the host soul. No matter how far the hollow soul was, the host soul would always know its position and everything it had experienced. There were some other ways to strengthen the hollow soul. For example, he could collect the murderous aura, the Qi, or other bizarre energy in heaven and earth. If the hollow soul could grow non-stop to a certain level, when it stayed in the puppet or the clone, it could urge the power of the host soul. When the hollow soul reached the highest level, it could even replace the host soul. The ice-cold flame knew how to divide the soul and train the hollow soul. However, its knowledge in cultivating the hollow soul wasn't enough to practice. To Yin, at this moment, he just needed to create the hollow soul. He didn't hurry, using the method to start to cultivate his host soul step by step. Firstly, he would nurture his soul with the nutrients from the soul consciousness, which would promote the change of the host soul. When his host soul was strong enough, he could divide it. In the gravitational room, he stopped training his body and started to sink into the cultivation of dividing his soul. The Spirit Potion Valley. Recently, many experts from the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, the Devil Valley showed up in the area. They were rushing with gloomy faces. In the Precious Potion Valley, some famous alchemists of the Divine Great Land were affected. They often walked back and forth in the valley. Sometimes, they sighed begrudgingly. Although many low-level warriors in the Dead Soul Mountain Range didn't know what was happening, they vaguely felt the danger like a breeze before a big storm. People who knew the secret told their disciples and friends silently. Some warriors who had regularly visited the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley left the area without leaving any trace. They didn't dare to stay in the Dead Soul Mountain Range for any longer. For the time being, while so many low-level warriors left the Spirit Potion Valley, many big characters whom they had rarely seen in daily life came to the place. More and more people recognized that the Dead Soul Mountain Range was about to face a big event. Inside the Spirit Hall, 5 people, including Li Zhang, Zhang Mu, Kuren Shi, Gaijia, and Mike, all wore a glum countenance. As the 5 sacred-level alchemists behind the Spirit Hall, among them, Li Zhang was the focus of the public attention. He was the person who had the real power of the Dead Soul Mountain Range. All alchemists had to admire and bow to him. Oldly, still nothing? Zhang Mu turned the ring on his finger, staring at the other agitatedly. It had been half a month. Many experts had searched and raked through all the areas which had the Dead Soul's evil lairs in the Dead Soul Mountain Range. They were trying to find the gathering spot of the Dead Souls and destroy that chunk of meat before it gave birth to the body of the Dead Soul. However, half a month had passed, but the dead souls which often appeared everywhere in the mountain range seemed to have all disappeared. Seeing time flying fast and the entire community of the dead souls secluding, Zhang Mu's mood became worse. During the battle dozens of years ago, Zhang Mu was still a profound-level alchemist. In that battle, his teacher was killed in the hands of an intimidating dead soul. His soul was dragged out, drawn into an evil lair, and then disappeared. That year, Zhang Mu had had only the Sky Realm cultivation base. He had no choice but to stare at the scene where his teacher's soul was drawn out. That battle had left a deep shadow in his heart. Until now, every time he recalled that battle, he felt fear inside. He had a deep grudge against the dead souls, and always wanted to kill all the dead souls in the Dead Soul Mountain range. All have disappeared. I think the dead souls have gained experience. Certainly, there's a strong dead soul behind them. Otherwise, the situation would be totally different. Li Zhongrong's body had a lot of fat. When he talked, even the fat on his cheeks trembled. The tool hall is working on it too. I guess they have no findings either. Or else, they would have already told us. Seems the big change is coming. Kuan Shi was as thin as a stick, his face sinister and vicious. Sharp light sparked in his eyes. Don't know how many people would die this time. You guys, we're sitting here now, but we're not sure who could survive. After he talked, everybody became more grimaced. You should seize the chance and impart your inheritance as soon as possible. Li Zhongrong's squinted eyes raked through the room. The Dead Soul Mountain range is the place we have been invested with much effort. We will never abandon it. The situation this time will be different from last time. If those dead souls can nurture a real body, this will be a catastrophe. Even if we leave the Dead Soul Mountain range, we won't be able to escape it. The other four nodded with a cold face. All of them knew the secret from dozens of years ago. They knew that the dead souls were dangerous. Once they gained a body, the power could rocket. At that time, the dead souls won't be dependent on the dead souls' evil lairs anymore. They could leave the Dead Soul Mountain range and go to the Divine Great Land. The lowest level dead souls had the ability to take the soul of the warriors easily. It was more like a piece of cake to the higher level dead souls. Once those dangerous dead souls could leave the Dead Soul Mountain range and come to the Divine Great Land, the warriors who didn't know about them beforehand wouldn't be able to resist. Their souls would be taken one after another, and they would become the new dead souls. At that time, the heaven and earth would have a big transformation. The dead souls would replace warriors and pollute this rich land, turning it into the world of dead souls. Thinking about the possible future, the five of them shivered without feeling cold. I've notified the leaders of the Pure Land, the Devil Valley, and the Radiant God Cult. Once the dead soul's real body appears, the leaders of these three forces will come to the Dead Soul Mountain range, said Li Zhongrong with a low voice. The four of them relaxed a little bit. Kuan Shi hesitated and couldn't help but ask, Old Li, where's the boy who found this mess? And how is he related to you? Weren't you cultivating in seclusion? Why did you agree to meet him? How can I know where he is? Li Zhongrong snorted and continued impatiently. He has a connection with me. Kuan Shi and the others were astounded. They wanted to ask for more, but as they saw his winced face, they couldn't inquire further, shutting their mouths begrudgingly. Outside the spirit hall, Lin Yiqi was toying the potted flowers with her arrogant complexion. She asked coldly, Shi Yin didn't come for you? No. After I came back from the Flying Cloud Summit, I have never met him again. Cherry always lacked confidence facing her, as she felt that she was one grade lower than the other girl. Perhaps he has left the Dead Soul Mountain range. Since they know a big disaster will come soon, anyone who can run has already run away. The ones who haven't moved yet are ready to move. Since Cherry knew the mutated dead souls would become more wild and sinister, she was afraid and wanted to leave too. Unfortunately, she was the hall guard of the Spirit Hall. Without the permission granted by one of the five of Li Zhongrong's group, no one was allowed to leave the Spirit Hall when the dead souls appeared. Once they were busted, their names would be erased from the Spirit Hall forever. Being an alchemist, it was okay not to join the Spirit Hall. But when the Spirit Hall erased one's name, his or her reputation was gone too. The community would scoff him as the worst among the alchemists. If he comes to see you, you must notify me. I have something I want to discuss with him. Lin Yachi arched her brow. To make it up for you, about the formation you've seen in my place, if you have something you want I ask, I can help. Cherry's blue eyes brightened as she nodded continually. Gravitational chamber. Shi Yin sat emotionlessly just like a rock that hadn't moved for 10,000 years, still and quiet. During half a month in this gravitational room, he had been sinking into his mind, wholeheartedly focusing on training the hollow soul, and didn't relax for even a second. Just recently, with the soul-dividing technique, the ice-cold flame passed him in a blurry state. He had successfully divided his soul, drawn out a strand of soul, and created a phantom of his host soul in the sea of consciousness, the hollow soul. Right when the hollow soul appeared, he immediately urged the soul consciousness to keep the hollow soul warm. That vague hollow soul was like a projection. After it received the soul consciousness, it turned into another image of the host soul in the sea of consciousness. However, it didn't have the intellect and the vitality of the real host soul. More soul consciousness was poured into the hollow soul. After an unknown time, the hollow soul became clearer. Besides the lack of vitality, it looked similar to the host soul. At this moment, the ice-cold flame sent him a message. It's enough. You can access the blacksmith's secrets of success now. Shi Yin was struck. He started to guide the hollow soul, dragging it little by little out of the sea of consciousness. The spooky phantom was as vague as a ghost, with thick aura slowly appearing in front of his eyes. When the hollow soul got out of the sea of consciousness, it became fragile as if it were about to vanish. The hollow soul can't be exposed for a long time. Guide it to the ancient book immediately, or else the hollow soul will vanish. The ice-cold flame reminded Shi Yin. Shi Yan's face changed. He didn't dare to observe more, took out the Book of Secrets and began his move. Chapter 541. Waste more effort. Chapter 541. Waste more effort. The hollow soul appeared as a thin gray smoke, floating and flying towards the blacksmith's secrets of success. It then disappeared silently, like a drop of water falling into the sea. Boom! He felt a rumbling tremor in his brain, after which a wonderful feeling flooded his sea of consciousness. His sea of consciousness was as if it had a big crack, from where flows of soul consciousness streamed through, getting into the blacksmith's secrets of success and pouring directly into the hollow soul. A link was formed between the host soul and the hollow soul. The host soul was still submerged in the sea of consciousness, but it got all the things the hollow soul was watching. The hollow soul was floating in an immense area. There was a light road like an ecliptic soaring to a distant place. With the vision of the hollow soul, he found himself in a strange new world. That marvelous ecliptic was like the heaven staircase, leading to a faraway, mysterious place. Bright lights sparkled along the road. In the white void, big seals were tumbling like clusters of clouds. Strange, miraculous lights crossed each other, carving the ancient magical formations on those seals. Refining medicine and weapons were similar. The experts should understand the strange and mysterious formations. As long as they had a deep understanding of drawing those formations, they could improve their attainment in refining. Ancient formations along the ecliptic were shining dazzlingly. They were the explanation of the most important secrets of tool refining. Each of them was moving lively, as they were transferring the truth of heaven and earth. The meanings they were conveying were surreptitious, including types of power. Clusters of refining formations were spinning along the ecliptic road. All of them were explicit and radiant like the meteors. They kept changing and didn't have a determined nature. The hollow soul stood at the beginning of the ecliptic. It didn't have any strange moves and was absorbing the soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness really quickly. Within the short period of 3 breaths, flows of soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness were sucked out by 1/10, and the consumption speed was still increasing. Shi Yin was scared. He gathered all of his soul, spirit, and qi, quieting down his mind and letting aside the impure thoughts. He concentrated on the magical, mysterious formations on the sides of the light road. Each formation was a method to refine weapons. They were in many complicated shapes. They varied strangely, which was hard to learn in just a short time. Burn to separate water formation, the Grand Soul Gathering formation, Original Universe Life formation, Three Soul Defense formation. Names of the formations crossed his head fast and gave him a shallow understanding. Each formation was mysteriously unpredictable. At first glance, he thought they were so marvelous that he couldn't comprehend them in short time. Once those ancient formations were carved on the treasures, it would rocket the power of the weapons, giving them the special abilities or subtle powers. As long as he could gain the truth of those formations and use them fluently, a blacksmith only needed one of those formations to earn a great living. Each formation was vastly obscure, and he couldn't obtain in a short time. Many of those had been lost for thousands of years. Some names of the formations had been listed in the ancient books of the blacksmiths. They had only a name, without any particular details. However, in this wonderful space, these formations were changed, following the subtle changes of the heaven and earth. To comprehend the true meanings of the formation, the blacksmith needed to reach a certain realm. If he were careful and detailed to study them, he could have a good grasp of the real magical features of the formation. Refining weapons wasn't Shi Yan's life goal. Shi Yan delayed at the beginning of the ecliptic for a while. Then, his hollow soul turned into an incomplete silhouette, moving swiftly. Teleportation formation. Teleportation formation. He repeated the name in his head. The hollow soul didn't stop, continually moving on the light road. If it found that the formations around weren't the teleportation formation, it would retreat immediately and continue walking forward. At the same time, his soul consciousness was flooding over like a broken dike with amazing speed. While his soul was muddy, his hollow soul had a glimpse of a formation that looked like a cluster along the ecliptic. The drawings of that formation were clear, expanding like a spider web in the void. Beams of silver light interweaved. At each intersection, words written in ancient calligraphy flashed from time to time. Ethereal crystal, fine earth stone, golden gong bead. Rare ores float under the light intersections of the formation. They flashed and then disappeared. On the cloud, rows of characters were arranged neatly, sparkling in a dark golden hue and twinkling like stars. They decided the way to portray the mysteries of this formation. Teleportation formation. He wanted to check it out carefully, but he suddenly felt dizzy. His sea of consciousness trembled. Thud. The blacksmith's secrets of success dropped on the floor. Shi Yan woke up from his neat, sitting position on the ground, sweat beading his face. He looked ashen and exhausted. His soul consciousness was consumed too much. The room was dark, but Shi Yan's pupils were shining with a divine light. He panted, but he was smiling brightly. Time wouldn't fail people who had high aspirations. The blacksmith's secrets of success did have the teleportation formation. Not just a description, but a whole direct observation of the method. As long as he could understand the revolution maze of the formation and collect enough the tools and materials, even if building the teleportation formation was complicated, it wouldn't be too troublesome. However, the overconsumed soul consciousness was beyond his estimation. He had never thought that reading an ancient book, which had the weapon refining methods, could use up his soul consciousness that fast. At this moment, his sea of consciousness was empty. The area was reduced, no bigger than 1/4 of his previous area. The sea of consciousness seemed to have dried up. The host's soul and the dormant 5 devils also looked dispirited. Both the host soul and the 5 devils depended on the sea of consciousness to live and cultivate. If the sea of consciousness were large, the host soul and the 5 devils would grow fast. If the sea of consciousness was narrow, the space the host soul and the 5 devils had for their cultivation would reduce, which would limit their growth. If his sea of consciousness went arid one day, the host soul and the 5 devils would bear the brunt, immediately being suffocated. To the host soul and the 5 devils, the sea of consciousness was the fountain of their beings. Without this origin of life, they couldn't survive for a long time. He felt dizzy while he was about to check out the miraculous features of the teleport formation. It was the sign of a dried sea of consciousness. As his host soul could feel the situation was wrong, it immediately cut the connection with the hollow soul, firmly dragging him out of that wonderful scene. Shi Yin sat still on the ground. His was mentally and physically exhausted, but his eyes were bright. As he had found the teleportation formation, when his sea of consciousness restored, he could save strength and time to find it next time. Although he had taken risks this time, his harvest wasn't bad. But he needed to recover his soul consciousness first. With that thought, he sat still, adjusted his breath, and fell asleep. The typical way to supplement the consumed profound qi was to condense the qi of the heaven and earth. However, to recover the soul consciousness, besides the precious pellets that people drooled for, the simplest method was to sleep and relax. One day and one night passed as fast as a blink of an eye. Shi Yin woke up worried. He sensed his sea of consciousness, then shook his head miserably. Sleeping was a simple way to supplement the soul consciousness. However, since it was too simple, its effect was the smallest. After sleeping for one day and one night, his soul consciousness had restored so little that he wanted to cry. The process of sensing the blacksmith's secrets of success had consumed 70% of his sea of consciousness. This sleep helped his soul consciousness recover, but not even 5%. Anyway, he couldn't sleep all the time. After one day and one night, he was sober, and to put himself to sleep again was impossible. Shi Yin calculated that if he used sleep to restore his soul consciousness, with this speed, he would need 1 month to fully recover. 1 month. Shi Yin got a headache. It was just the first time he had read the blacksmith's secrets of success, as the information was flowing swiftly in his head. After his soul consciousness restored, he didn't know how many times he had to drain his sea of consciousness to perceive the subtle features of the teleportation formation. In this wonderful world, the consumption speed of soul consciousness could be considered terrifying. To comprehend the Upanishad of the teleportation formation, he needed to visit that world more often to digest the details slowly. With this speed of consumption, his full soul consciousness was just enough to endure 1 hour. What he could do in 1 hour. If it needed 1 month after one time of observing the formation, how much time did he have to spend to gain the subtle features of the teleportation formation? No, he had to find another method. Shi Yin stood up and went out of the room. Looking at the spirit potion valley afar from him, he saw many alchemists hurrying back and forth with worried faces. Alchemists. His mind was moved, and his eyes brightened. He couldn't help but smile. Where was he? The Dead Soul mountain range. Things that were abundant here were alchemists and their pellets. It would be hard to find the pellet to restore his soul consciousness somewhere else. But in the Spirit Potion Valley, he should be able to find some, right? He was moved, so he immediately gave up the idea of sleeping to recover his soul consciousness. Then, he strolled towards the Spirit Potion Valley. A strand of his soul consciousness caressed the storage ring, swiftly touching each of the sparkling crystals and tools. He was considering what he should use to exchange for the pellets to recover his soul consciousness. The Yang family was filthy rich. After that battle in the Endless Sea, the cultivating materials and crystals he collected from other forces were too many. When he left, his storage ring was packed. There were 3,000 top-grade essence chi crystals, 15,000 high-grade essence chi crystals, and the other materials piled up like small mountains. Even if he was in the divine great land, he was still a young rich man. Only the most outstanding disciples of the 7 factions could be able to compare to him in terms of wealth. He didn't need to worry about the essence chi crystals. After Shi Yin left the Precious Tool Valley, he was surprised, and his face changed a little bit. He could sense that there were at least 7 spirit realm experts in the Spirit Potion Valley. Also, there were strong aura that were hiding, just like the firm, grand mountains. Their energy fluctuations were heavy, but they were concealed. However, Shi Yin could still sense them. So many strong warriors. It had been half a month. What had happened to the Precious Tool Valley and the Spirit Potion Valley? Why were there so many strong warriors gathering here? Dead souls. Recalling the grimaced face of the elder before, Shi Yin seemed to get the problem. The danger of the dead soul should have been spreading out, which gathered the warriors living around the Dead Soul Mountain Range in the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley. In the two valleys, besides the aura of the spirit realm experts, many cold-faced warriors were walking on the streets. It wasn't an exception. Those warriors had followed the path of cultivating their powers. They were masters in bloody fighting, but they weren't alchemists or blacksmiths. Whenever the dead souls had some great changes, precious treasures would fly out from the dead souls' evil lairs. Many of them were the top-grade ones in the divine Greatland. The oncoming catastrophe from the dead souls made some chicken warriors leave, but it attracted some with big guts too. People died for money, and the birds died in pursuit of food. As long as they could earn some benefits, to the warriors, there was no dangerous place they couldn't enter. They all knew that the Dead Soul Mountain Range would be a dreadful place. Thus, many of them still came for the greed of treasures. Of course, the ones who dared to come here weren't nice. They looked vicious and had a murderous aura. Yin couldn't help but stare at them. I should go to find the pellets to restore my soul consciousness first. Yin thought and sped up, walking straight to the Spirit Potion Valley. Chapter 542, Evil Wind Turbulence. Chapter 542, Evil Wind Turbulence. What? No? Not even a single pellet? Yin clenched his jaw in a shock, his face angry. You guys don't even have the pellet to restore the soul consciousness. What the heck are you selling? Doesn't this store sell pellets? I'm sorry, sir. Besides that type of pellet and medicines, we have everything else. For example, we have the pellets to restore essence chi, strengthen your physique, stable your realm to prevent bedevilment, etc. We have plenty of them here. You can choose anything you want. We can always deal the price. The shopkeeper smiled humbly, bowing his body. Yin wore a cold face, then left while snorting. 15 minutes later, standing in the middle of a crowded street in the Spirit Potion Valley, Yin felt dispirited. He had visited 10 stores, and none of them was an exception. They didn't have even a single pellet that could do something with soul consciousness. The threat from the dead souls had been spread out all over the Dead Soul Mountain Range. The first thing the warriors did when they came here was to buy the pellets and medicine that could help restore and strengthen their soul consciousness. The dead souls could erode the soul, which depended on the sea of consciousness. If a warrior's sea of consciousness weren't stable, his soul would be weakened, and thus, the dead soul could easily attack him. All warriors understood the nature of the dead souls as they knew how important it was to strengthen their soul consciousness. Within 5 or 6 days, all pellets that could help strengthen the soul consciousness in the Spirit Potion Valley, even if they had their price rocketed, were all sold out. These sorts of pellet became scarce now. Alchemists who could refine them had stopped supplying to the shop. They wanted to keep the medicine for themselves. All of a sudden, in this big Spirit Potion Valley, no store could supply this kind of a pellet or medicine. Even if they were willing to buy with a good price, the alchemists didn't want to sell. The news regarding the dead souls had been spread out fast in the two valleys. The more they talked about it, the more dangerous it became. The powers of the dead souls were amplified continually by the news they were telling each other. People felt insecure, and the alchemists and the blacksmiths didn't dare to leave the valleys. They were concentrating on refining pellets and forging weapons for themselves. They had to improve their willpower at any cost. At this moment, the pellets that could supplement the soul consciousness became the treasure to protect their lives. None of them agreed to sell even a single pellet. The warriors came here for the dead souls had used a lot of money to collect the goods. Shortly, there was no stock in the entire Spirit Potion Valley. Yin had so many essence chi crystals to spend, but he couldn't find a supplier. He had a big regret now. He was the first one who got to know the anomaly of the dead souls. If he had been smarter, he could have collected more medicines of this kind right when the news was still concealed. Too late to regret. The feeling of having a lot of money but not being able to buy the goods he wanted agitated him. Along the streets in the center of the valley, warriors were walking back and forth with gloomy faces. Their eyes were ferocious when looking at the others, just like a starving wolf, as if they considered all strangers their enemies. The valley where people used to live in harmony and peace now was at daggers. The atmosphere was tense too. Although Shi Yin had stomped his feet in regret, it was of no use. He gradually gathered himself together and squinted his eyes with a cold look on his face. He was about to find one or two guys who didn't have a good vision to rob them. He wasn't a good guy. His hands had been soaked in blood. Once he was determined, killing a man and destroying his body wasn't a thing to him. As the goods were scarce and he could buy them from nowhere, if he wanted to have the pellets, the only way to do was to snatch the things he wanted. He didn't have a mental barrier when stealing or snatching things from other people. Once he spotted the target, he wasn't afraid of killing in mass scale. Most of the warriors in the valley now weren't good guys. While killing these sorts of men, he wouldn't feel guilty. When he was observing pedestrians with an evil look, a familiar figure appeared in his vision, Taimu. 5 people of Taimu's group hadn't left the Dead Soul Mountain range. They knew of the oncoming deadly event, but because of the 3 dead souls, they were still waiting for Cherry to compensate them. Taimu saw Shi Yin standing at the corner and was terrified, keeping his mouth shut. He instinctively wanted to get rid of that young man. At this moment, Shi Yin's face was thin and pallid. His look was cold and dark, while the corner of his mouth curled a little bit, just like a cold knife. He looked as savage as a beast waiting for its prey. Other people didn't know Shi Yin, but Taimu had experienced it. As he saw Shi Yin's look, he wanted to run away as fast as possible. "Come here." Shi Yin snorted, then made a gesture with his finger. He sneered. "Where do you want to hide seeing me? Are you afraid that I'll eat you alive?" Taimu was timid, his face long as if the other had asked him to kill a child. "Sure, Yinji, we aren't going to ask you for the dead souls. What do you want?" "Help me buy some pellet to restore the soul consciousness. I don't care about the price." Shi Yin searched his storage ring. Translucent top-grade essence chi crystals emerged one by one in his palm. They were sparkling beautifully under the sun like precious gems. "I don't have them." Taimu shook his head bitterly. "Really, I don't have them. When I arrived at the Spirit Potion Valley, they had stopped selling them. Anyway, Cherry told us that 3 days later, she would give us some pellets of this kind. We're waiting for her. That's why we haven't left yet." "Cherry?" Shi Yin was startled. He curled his lips into a smile. His figure faded, then disappeared in just a blink. "That slaughtering star, sigh. I really thought that he wanted to eat humans. Those who are having bad luck getting this guy watching over them would never be able to leave the Dead Soul Mountain range. I don't know why I feel scared just by looking at him." Taimu swept away the beads on his forehead and muttered. "He said that he forgave us because we're the members of the God's sect. Do you think he's a disciple of the God's sect, too?" assumed the young girl. "If he were one of the God's sect's disciples, why would he stay anonymous?" Taimu objected. "I think he knows someone from our sect, and his impression of our sect isn't bad. But it's certain that he isn't a member of the God's sect. With his realm at his age, as long as he's one of us, he'll be famous. It's impossible that no one knows him." His friends thought, then nodded in agreement. "Spirit Hall. Is Cherry here?" Shi Yin stopped a guard and asked him without manners. "You are?" The guard was dizzy. He was bewildered for a while, then replied to Shi Yin with respect. "I'll call her for you." This guard had seen Shi Yin before. As he saw that Jalin was servile to him, he understood that Shi Yin wasn't a small character. He didn't linger, and hurled himself out of the hall. Not long after that, Cherry arrived. She invited Shi Yin to get inside with a smiling face. "Old Li's here, too." Cherry took him to the corner, then lowered her tone. "The other 4 elders are here too. Why haven't you left yet?" "I heard that you have the pellets to recover the soul consciousness. Give me some. I'll pay you a good price." Shi Yin wasn't interested in Li Zhengrong and his men, asking for the pellets directly. Cherry was surprised. "Do you want to find the dead soul's evil lairs to test your fortune, too?" "No. I need them for another purpose." Shi Yin shook his head. While he was talking, pieces of top-grade essence chi crystals had been put into a gold-threaded gunny sack. Shortly, the gunny sack was filled with top-grade essence chi crystals. There were hundreds of them at least. He directly threw the sack to Cherry and told her, "No matter what price you offer, I'll take them all." Cherry was full of regret since she didn't know why he was so hurried. Here, take these 3 bottles of the soul restoration pellet. Each bottle has 70 pills. Thanks, Yin smiled at her, didn't turn his head back and left immediately. Hey, Cherry called out, but by the time her voice arose, she didn't see his shadow anywhere. This be asterisk starred. What's he doing? Why he's so hurried? Cherry stomped her feet. Looking at the sack of top-grade essence chi, she was surprised and happy at the same time. Being a hall guard, her salary for 1 year was just 50 top-grade essence chi crystals. This gunny sack of essence chi was a huge fortune to her, as much as her wages of 3 or 4 years working at the spirit hall. However, this wasn't what she wanted. She was suspicious, and she wanted to meet Yin to make it clear. But Yin disappeared instantly and didn't even give her his address. Cherry, who's that kid? Why did he give you so many essence chi crystals? Are you too? A thin alchemist with a gloomy face had witnessed all the things. He approached her quietly and asked, "None of your business." Yin snorted with his cold appearance. She didn't pay attention to that alchemist, taking her crystals and walking to the hall. What? He came? In a quiet chamber behind the spirit hall, Lin Yiqi jolted up. Where's he? Left. When I wanted to chase after him, I couldn't see him anywhere, explained Cherry. Lin Yiqi didn't look happy as she asked the other girl arrogantly. What did that asterisk shoal come for? He wanted to buy the soul consciousness restoring pellets. I gave him, Cherry narrated. Soul consciousness restoring pellets? Lin Yiqi chuckled. She squinted her eyes and then said smilingly, seems he's interested in the dead soul's evil lairs too. Well, excellent. In several days, a young generation of experts from the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley will gather. I don't like some of them, but I'm not their match. That asterisk shoals here too, so I will ask him to teach them a lesson. Lin Yiqi was thrilled. Cherry kept her mouth shut, not daring to talk much. The news of the young experts from the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley were about to arrive had been spread out all over the Dead Soul Mountain range. Those people would come together with their full power. On the one hand, they wanted to kill the dead souls, and on the other, this was a good chance for them to practice their skills. Also, they had a secret hope of collecting strange treasures from the dead souls' evil lairs. Young hotshots of these 3 ancient factions in the divine Great Land always had keen eyesight. Their men were domineering, and the women were arrogant. Each of them had brutal deeds that made people fear them. Although Cherry was an alchemist, her rank wasn't high enough. When she saw those people, she had to behave and not dare to quarrel with them. Lin Yiqi, as Li Zhengrong's disciple, of course wasn't afraid. Anyway, her realm was relatively low, so she wasn't their opponent. In the past, whenever they had a dispute, she always bore a bit of a loss, which she still kept in her heart. However, she had no way to counter them. But now she knew Yin was here. She immediately wanted to use the relationship with Yin to ask him to take revenge for her. The Precious Tool Valley and the Spirit Potion Valley are just that big. As long as he still stays in the valleys, I can always drag him out. Harumph. Lin Yiqi contemplated for a while. She squinted and smiled. Later on, she didn't tell Cherry but left the spirit hall alone, walking around the valley where evil wolves were playing. Cherry waited for her to leave further, then hurried to find Jia Lin to report him that the girl had left. After Yin got the soul-restoring pellet, he stormed into the chamber he had rented and started to restore his consumed soul consciousness as fast as he could. He was preparing to probe the mystically subtle features of the teleportation formation once again. Chapter 543, Calamity. Chapter 543, Calamity. Mount Heaven Whistle. Inside a gloomy cave in the center of the mountain, countless dark green dead souls hung on the walls, covering the entire surface. A pond of corpses situated in the middle of the cave where bodies piled up. Dark green blood was constantly oozing. Many blocks of meat were stuck into the corpse refining pond, sucking the nutrition from the dead bodies. They kept enlarging continually. Dark green dead souls were floating around the pond, emitting their cold, evil aura as if they were guarding it. Mount Heaven Whistle was a small and poor mountain among almost 1,000 mountains of the Dead Soul Mountain range. The heaven and earth aura here was faint, and no warriors stayed on this mountain to cultivate. Inside some caves in Mount Heaven Whistle, green light columns as big as tree trunks were shrinking, and a large amount of yin qi was overflowing from them. Flows of this kind of an evil aura poured into the big cave in the center of the mountain one by one. Dead souls inside the cave were spurting out a dark green, viscous liquid onto the meat chunks. This liquid then turned into layers of energy, getting absorbed into the meat chunks. Time passed quietly. Crack. The cracking sound of an egg hatching rose. The membrane covering the meat chunk cracked, then fell on the ground piece by piece. A green, short-limbed creature which was as tall as a 10-year-old child emerged from the meat chunk. Its skin was wrinkled like an ugly toad. Its 3 pupils had a deep, cold, dark green hue, and its look was sinister to the extreme. It was a humanoid creature, with a pointy head and no ears. There were many holes on its cheeks, and its nostrils moved as if it were breathing the evil aura of this cave. Dead souls in the cave suddenly got excited. They led that short-limbed creature towards the dead soul's evil lair. Hundreds of dead souls joined hands and fiercely pushed that creature into the dead soul's evil lair inside the cave. Swoosh! The first body of the dead soul that was refined from the corpse refining pond had been pushed into the dead soul's evil lair. A sinister green halo expanded from the evil lair as its center, rippling out. The size of the evil lair doubled in just a blink. From outside the evil lair, it looked like numerous dark green tentacles were piercing into the dead soul body, transmitting the evil energy just like a drip feed. The dead soul body grew quickly. Immense green light shot out from the holes in its cheeks as it gradually gained the size of an adult. Deep inside the dead soul's evil lair, a flow of green light zoomed over from a distant area, hitting the body instantly. The bizarre, cold eyes of the dead soul body became more evilly intimidating after the dead soul had entered it. A gloomy evil aura shot out from the evil lair. Crack, crack. Crispy cracking sounds echoed from the evil lair. A dead soul body was occupied. It then struggled out of the evil lair and descended in the cave of Mount Heaven Whistle. Hundreds of dead souls surrounded the evil lair and cheered. Their sounds were sharp, their whistles seeming like thousands of ghosts crying miserably. An aura of resentment soared to the sky. Inside Mount Heaven Whistle, blocks of meat enlarged fast. Soon, another dead soul body was born. The first dead soul with its body got out of the evil lair, then walked to the pond in the cave. Countless green tentacles extended from its waist like worms and pierced into the newborn dead soul bodies. Evil energy quickly poured into the newborn bodies, enlarging them. Not long afterward, excited high-level dead souls floating around all stormed over at the same time, choosing a body and entering their new hosts. Dead Soul Mountain Range. It had been half a month, but not many warriors and alchemists left the place because of the Dead Soul event. They decided to stay and cultivate. However, some of them started to disappear into thin air. During half a month, hundreds of warriors, alchemists, and blacksmiths seemed to evaporate. Some people had taken risks intruding the Dead Soul Mountain Range to hunt the dead souls and harvest the treasures from the dead souls' evil lairs. They all disappeared one by one. Have you heard the news of Zheng and his team? They were operating in the east of Mount Heaven Whistle. When they found out that the expert stronger than them had disappeared after leaving no trace, they became more well-behaved. At the same time, the Spirit Hall and the Tool Hall had sent the message to the warriors cultivating in the surrounding mountains, asking them to come to the valley quickly. The ones they couldn't contact, they couldn't do anything more for them. At the same time, after the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley sent their elders to the site, they couldn't help but pay more attention to the moves of the Dead Soul Mountain Range tightly. Some said that true God Realm warriors of these 3 factions had gradually come back from their secluding cultivation. They would hurry to the Dead Soul Mountain Range soon. All of a sudden, the Dead Soul Mountain Range had become the focus of the entire Divine Great Land. After the ancient factions got the information of the anomaly in the Dead Soul Mountain Range, they all used their ways to collect the news from there. The Ice Emperor City. Bing Qingtong, Shuang Zuzhu, Long Danqing, and Han Shui had been cultivating in the bone-chilling ice chamber. When they woke up from their cultivation, Bing Qingtong received the news from the General Union. Her smile ceased. "Sister, what's up?" Han Shui let out a light laughter. Her beautiful eyes brightened as the cold aura ameliorated her shining smile with an outstanding bearing. "There's a big change in the Dead Soul Mountain range. According to the General Union, it's a big calamity." Bing Qingtong narrated the news she received in detail. After the bad experience with Yu Li Ming and Ning Du Quan, the bond between the four sisters had restored. They had no grudges now. They had spent time together to cultivate in the ice chamber. Both their realms and ice jade technique were improving fast. At the moment, Bing Qingtong seemed to have entered the peak of the spirit realm. Han Shui had a significant improvement as well. Furthermore, Shuang Yuzhu and Long Danqing now could urge their ice jade technique more fluently. After they had a notable increase in their realms, the General Union showed them a better attitude, much better than before. When they received the news of the divine Great Land, they would immediately send to the women here. Ning Du Quan actually wanted to trouble them more. But when he knew that the women's realms had been much improved, he couldn't help but give up his attempt, washing away the thought of declaring war. The Ice Emperor City had changed. Didn't that bastard go to the Dead Soul Mountain range? With his speed, he should be there already. What should we do? Han Shui was scared. She shot up from her seat, her face worried. Shuang Yuzhu and Long Danqing slammed their brows together. "We should go and look for him." Long Danqing stood up, her face agitated. "No," Bing Qingtong shook her head. "The situation of the Dead Soul Mountain range is much complicated now. We can't get there on time. With his capacity, Shi Yin can protect himself. We shouldn't worry about him that much. We'd better keep an eye on the information. I think he would be okay. Anyways, even Ning Du Quan had no way to catch him. If it isn't a true God Realm warrior, I think he will be all right." Hearing Bing Qingtong say so, Shuang Yuzhu and Long Danqing contemplated, then nodded. However, they still wore anxious faces. Precious Tool Valley. Lin Yiqi approached a house which was specialized in offering quiet chambers for warriors to cultivate. She didn't keep the smiling face as usual, frowning while quietly walking to a gravitational room. She called with a low tone, "Shi Yin, open up. I have something I want to tell you. Let me in. Quickly." Chapter 544. Provoking. Chapter 544. Provoking. Shi Yan's face was thin and pale. There was no light in his eyes when he woke up in the gravitational chamber. He had only one bottle of soul-restoring pellet left from the 3 bottles he had received. However, his understanding of the teleportation formation had just crossed the threshold. At this speed, it wouldn't take long for him to comprehend the subtle features of the teleportation formation thoroughly. The rapid draining of soul consciousness every time he was in that strange world scared him. Although he had the soul-restoring pellet, every time he got in that world, it took him 3 days to recover his soul consciousness. Seeing that he was about to use up the soul-restoring pellet, he started to think about the supply one more time. At that moment, the stony door of the gravitational chamber was banged loudly. Lin Yiqi's anxious voice still arose. He pulled himself together, got up, and then opened the door to let her in. He frowned. "What do you come here for?" "You're here, indeed." Lin Yiqi exhaled, then observed the gravitation room. Then, she said, "The Dead Soul Mountain range is really dangerous at this moment. I'm worried that you didn't know the situation clearly and have left the valley. I am here to notify you." Then, Lin Yiqi told him in detail the situation of the Dead Soul Mountain range. When he heard that more and more warriors went missing every day, Shi Yin was scared. While he was unconscious, the situation of the Dead Soul Mountain range had turned bad. "I will not leave for the time being. Don't worry." "Oh yeah, do you have the pellets to restore soul consciousness? If you have, give me some. We can deal the price." Shi Yin poured out some soul-restoring pellet from the storage ring and took them in all. While he was sensing his soul consciousness being restored a bit, his face looked a bit satisfied. "If you don't leave the valley, why do you need the pellets?" Lin Yiqi's eyes were suspicious. She scrutinized him from left to right, then asked all of a sudden, "Are you practicing some techniques that depend on the soul consciousness?" "No. I know it. Only the 7 ancient factions know how to cultivate the techniques using soul consciousness. Even my teacher doesn't know these techniques. These techniques are too scarce. The ones who know them are as rare as phoenix feather or unicorn horn. If you know how to cultivate your soul consciousness, you don't need many pellets to restore it." Shi Yan's eyes lit up. The technique to cultivate the soul consciousness? The soul consciousness was the most basic treasure trove. A strong soul consciousness gave way to a strong host soul. The stronger the soul consciousness was, the more sensitive the sensing was. To the alchemists and the blacksmiths, the soul consciousness was an important matter. On their way practicing refining medicine and forging weapons, if their soul consciousness was strong and keen enough, when they refined things, they could control the aura of heaven and earth better, and the formation or the spell they carved on their products would be more exquisite. Their speed was also strengthened overall. Cultivating the soul consciousness could give the host soul a big space. The soul consciousness was really magical. The more it was refined, the better it would be when the warrior urged his power. When Shi Yan was in the quiet cloudland and endless sea, he had never heard about a technique specialized in cultivating the soul consciousness. Their soul consciousness could only grow after they had broken through a new realm. Hearing this from Lin Yiqi, he was overjoyed. To understand the mysteries of the teleportation formation in the blacksmith's secrets of success thoroughly, he had to consume his soul consciousness continually. If he had the technique to cultivate the soul consciousness, it wouldn't take much of his effort when comprehending the teleportation formation. At the same time, refining and condensing the essence of the soul consciousness also had a big impact on his martial arts. In the divine Great Land, do only the 7 ancient factions have the techniques to cultivate the soul consciousness? Shi Yan was moved. He didn't conceal, asking directly, "Does anyone sell this kind of techniques?" "No." Lin Yiqi shook her head. "Besides the 7 ancient factions, there are some mysterious experts who know how to cultivate the soul consciousness. However, finding them is harder than finding the 7 ancient factions. You shouldn't think about it much." Shi Yan didn't speak, but was contacting the ice-cold flame. The ice-cold flame had had several masters, and each one of them was a genius. They were the peak realm experts, or the blacksmith at a far-reaching level. These kinds of characters could know how to train their soul consciousness hopefully. When the ice-cold flame was integrated fully with its master, although it would be limited, once the master died, it could gain all the hidden and mysterious memories of its master. Shi Yan thought that perhaps the ice-cold flame knew something. "No. If I knew it, I would have told you already the first time you tried to access the blacksmith's secrets of success. My previous masters had only focused on their powers. They didn't put much effort into training soul consciousness in the host soul. So, I can't help you," the ice-cold flame replied shortly. Shi Yan cut the connection with the flame, his face disappointed. He closed his eyes to contemplate for a while, then spoke to Lin Yiqi. "Okay. So, do you have the pellets or medicines that can recover the soul consciousness?" "I have the original soul pellet. It's much more precious than your soul-restoring pellet. I can give you 2 bottles. Each bottle has 50 pills. One original soul pellet is more effective than 20 soul-restoring pellets." Lin Yiqi chuckled, explaining the differences between the 2 pellets. The soul-restoring pellet can only restore the consumed soul consciousness. However, not only can my original soul pellet recover the soul consciousness fast, but also help it increase. My teacher's an alchemist. Even though he doesn't know how to train the soul consciousness, he has used the pellets to improve his soul consciousness. Of course, pellets are just medicines. They aren't specialized techniques. The improvement made by the pellets is limited. Normally, a warrior can use only 3 bottles of the original soul pellet to strengthen his soul consciousness. After that, even if he uses more pellets, he can't make it progress further. At that time, it can only be used as a pellet to restore the consumed soul consciousness. Of course, its recovering speed is much faster than the soul-restoring pellets. Shi Yan's eyes brightened. "How many essence chi crystals do you want?" "I don't need the essence chi crystals. Lin Yiqi smiled like a little fox, squinting her eyes. You help me with this stuff, and I'll give you 2 bottles for free. What stuff? Shi Yin was quite alert. I have to say that although I need the original soul pellet, I won't waste a lot of my strength for you. Help me teach someone a lesson. As long as you can satisfy me, besides these 2 bottles, I can find 2 more for you. How does it sound? Who? Some jerks of the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley. Lin Yiqi gritted her teeth, her eyes sparkling with resentment. These years, those assholes have often bullied me. Although I'm a warrior, my master has grounded me and asked me to study the spiritual formations for refining medicine. I don't have enough strength, so I'm not their opponent. Pure Land, Radiant God Cult, and Devil Valley were the 3 forces with their names spreading throughout the entire Divine Great Land. Normal, people felt scared whenever they heard these names. In the whole Divine Great Land, the powers of the 7 ancient factions had been stood firm for tens of thousands of years. With their profound history, people found it hard to estimate their internal resources. A generation of successors nurtured by the 7 ancient factions, no matter it was in terms of the techniques, martial arts, experience, or treasures, they were always on top. These young people of the ancient faction were more powerful than the leaders of some small sections, and they were all arrogant, swaggering around the divine great land with no fear in their hearts. You want me to offend these 3 forces at the same time? Shi Yin beamed a forced smile as he suddenly had a headache. If you don't dare, I'll keep my original soul pellets, snorted Lin Yiqi. Recently, it's like finding the needle in a haystack when you want to find the restoring soul medicine in the Spirit Potion Valley. Unless you snatch from someone, don't think about using a higher price to buy the medicines. Of course, I know that you have the guts to mess up with other people. Perhaps you will use force to take them. But if you do so, you'll be the common enemy of the whole Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley. Currently, people in the Dead Soul Mountain Range were flustered. Under the arrangement of the Spirit Hall and the Tool Hall, many warriors had gathered. If someone started to slaughter the warriors, of course, it would enrage the hotshots here. At the moment, besides the sacred-level alchemists and blacksmiths in the 2 valleys, there were Spirit Realm elders from the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley staying in the Spirit Potion Valley and the Precious Tool Valley. Even if Shi Yin were more confident, provoking the patience of all warriors in the 2 valleys was an unwise move. You think about it, Lin Yiqi smiled, looking at him without any hurry. Cold light flashed across Shi Yan's eyes. He kept silent for a long while, then lifted his head to talk to her. What cultivation base do they have? Around the peak of Sky Realm, I assume. Not much different from yours. Lin Yiqi smiled at him tenderly. Little Yin, I know you're at the peak of Sky Realm, too. But your real competence is more tremendous than theirs. I believe that those jerks from the Pure Land, the Radiant God Cult, and the Devil Valley aren't your match. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to provoke the freaks at Spirit Realm. Hee. Deal. Shi Yin suddenly shot up from this seat, extending one hand to the girl. First, give me 2 bottles of the original soul pellet. Wait until I restore my soul consciousness. I'm going there to help you. Deal. Lin Yiqi was frank enough, and immediately gave him 2 green bottles. Use warm water to take the pellet. Once it gets in your stomach, you should urge the medicinal efficacy to enter your soul consciousness. Then, you'll know what to do next. I'm waiting for you in the gravitational room. 10 pellets are enough to supplement all of your consumed soul consciousness. Shi Yin received the bottle, taking out 10 pills. Then, he took out a jade china bowl from the storage ring. A fire sparked from his fingertip, and shortly, the water in the jade bowl became boiling hot. Shi Yin swallowed the original soul pellets with hot water. He then sat down in front of Lin Yiqi and started his recovery. Where's that little girl? Outside a manor, How High of the Devil Valley asked while caressing a dragon-shaped jade pendant, his eyes cold, raking around the place. She got in. Emerald jade silky fibers shot out from Ming Mei's slender fingers. They flew one round around the manor, which helped her confirm the information. The medicine she sold me last time had poison in it. After I took it, I almost fell into bedevilment. How High gritted his teeth. That girl's eviler than warriors cultivating demonic methods like us. If I didn't react fast, not to mention breaking through the new realm, my cultivation base would have decreased. That damn little girl, even if Li Zheng protects her, I still have to give her a lesson. You deserve that. Mingmei laughed cheerily. Her graceful body swayed on the spot, with green waves lingering on her body. Well, I had quietly sent my signals to you, but you didn't care. You only wanted to tease her. If you didn't want her, why would she always sells medicine blended with poison to you? Harumph. I'm willing to be poisoned rather than messing up with you. How Hai's face became colder. I don't want to die without a known reason. Then, How Hai took a deep breath, entering the manner Lin Yiqi had gotten in. Chapter 545. Cousin? Chapter 545. Cousin? The original soul pellet was much more effective than the soul-restoring pellet indeed. After he swallowed 10 pills, they turned into a warm current, flowing toward his sea of consciousness. The sea of consciousness seemed like it was watered with a fluid of growth, being restored rapidly. The consumed soul consciousness had been supplemented quickly under the magical effect of this warm current. When using the soul-restoring pellet to recover the consumed soul consciousness, it required more than half a day. However, the original soul pellet needed only 15 minutes. His soul consciousness was recovered. After sensing it, Shi Yin could confirm that if he had more original soul pellets, after his soul consciousness was restored, it would enlarge a little bit more. However, Lin Yiqi didn't give him more time. As soon as his soul consciousness had been restored, Lin Yiqi immediately screamed out, calling him to get out of the gravitational room and take revenge for her. Xin Yin was in high spirits, narrowing his eyes. Cold light sparkled in his pupils, while he curled his lips. No need to bother, they've come for you already. Lin Yiqi's smile froze as she snorted. That quick? Seems like they always keep an eye on me. Those jerks do have bad thoughts. Indeed, none of them are nice. Shi Yin stood up, facing Lin Yiqi. He then took off his dirty greenish-gray warrior clothes and changed into a pure black one. Adjusting his collar, Shi Yin kicked the door open and strode out. Outside the room, How Hai and Ming Mei stood there with their electric-sharp eyes and deep, gloomy aura. Third sky of Sky Realm. Shi Yin's eyes lit up. Just at first glance, he recognized their cultivation base precisely. How Hai and Ming Mei were wearing silvery, gray armor and scarlet armor respectively. Their precious armors covered half of their bodies, and light sparkled shiningly from their arms and knees. Vaguely, people could see energy fluctuations from these spots. There were some sorts of strange and evil formations carved on their armors, which could gather the heaven and earth chi. Although the two stood still, heaven and earth chi in the surroundings gathered proactively towards them, entering the formation on their armors and getting absorbed into their bodies. This supported them to condense the essence chi at any minute. They both wore storage rings and another 5-colored ring on their fingers. These rings shimmered with tender, translucent halo, which indicated that they weren't just normal items. Worth their identity, the successors of the ancient factions. Shi Yin complimented them in his head. Their clothing, accessories, the storage rings, and the rings on their arms were most likely all priceless items. They should have some special effects that could enhance their strength while fighting. The third sky of Sky Realm cultivation base of these two people was full of the aura of the ancient era. Their essence chi was pure, which was obviously higher than the ordinary third sky of Sky Realm warriors. While his eyes were raking through How Hai and Ming Mei, the other two were observing him too. A jet-black warrior cloth covered a muscular body with a cold attitude. His long black hair draped over his shoulders. His eyes were like 2 stars shining and oppressing people's minds. How Hai and Ming Mei were shaken inside, but still kept their faces stiff. They could feel the brutal aura exuded from Shi Yin, while his breath was filled with clear murderous intention. Not a soft persimmon. Just at first glance, How Hai and Ming Mei understood something. They then could see the fear deep in each other's eyes. The murderous aura couldn't be gained through cultivation. A warrior could only obtain it from fatal fights and slaughter, in which he had to kill many other warriors. If others sensed them carefully, they could see the murderous aura on Hao Hai and Ming Mei too. However, it was much less than Shi Yan's. Who was this man? Hao Hai and Ming Mei exchanged looks, their hearts filled with surprise while they were searching for the identity of young and outstanding men in the divine great land in their heads. Names of prominent young men crossed their minds fast. Shaking his head, Hao Hai realized that none of the outstanding young men in the divine great land matched with the bearing Shi Yan had. Lin Yiqi let out a light chuckle. She slowly strolled out of the gravitation room, throwing a glance at Hao Hai. Her beautiful eyes showed her disdain towards the young man. She snorted and said impatiently, "You come here again? For what?" Hao Hai was enraged. A cold light slowly crossed his phoenix eyes that could scare people. "The pellet you sold me contained an extreme poison. I almost fell in bewilderment. You tell me what I come for?" Ah, Lin Yiqi didn't change her face. On the contrary, she giggled. "When I gave it to you, didn't I remind you that I didn't refine it? I remember I told you that already. Remembering it or not, it's your responsibility." An interesting smile hung on Ming Mei's face as she was retreating her graceful body, keeping a distance with Hao Hai. Then, she spoke mildly, "Yiqi Mei Mei, I'm here just to watch the fun. You don't need to be bothered with me." Lin Yiqi's face was cold. She snorted and muttered something under her breath, as if she was cursing someone else. "Turns out I can't reason with you." Hao Hai wasn't angry. He seemed to be calmer, nodded as he said, "Give me back the materials I've given you to refine pellets. Or, give me the real pellets. Otherwise, I won't let this slip away. Regarding me getting poisoned, as long as you apologize, I won't trouble you more to give Old Li face." In your dreams, Lin Yiqi cracked a mocking smile, her face full of disdain. Hao Hai's countenance became tenser. He took a deep breath. The ring on his arm had many black fibers which looked like seaweed in the deep ocean, extending and winding around both of his arms. Those black fibers were moving with some mysterious trajectory, forming tiny but dense demonic patterns on his arms. After the patterns were formed, they started to absorb the essence qi in his body. The black, fine fibers forming the patterns became more exquisite after receiving the essence qi. Now, they looked like the shiny long black hair. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Strange sounds echoed from his armor as energy fluctuations expanded everywhere. Heaven and earth qi was suddenly restrained. The overflowing rich heaven and earth aura seemed to be separated by an invisible barrier. Not only the space surrounding them, but also the heaven and earth aura surrounding Shi Yan and Lin Yiqi were cut off. A space-twisting energy appeared next to Hao Hai. Space then started to crumple as if it were about to collapse, giving people a strange feeling of shrinking. Trace of grudge sparkled in Lin Yiqi's eyes. She stepped backward quietly until she reached the door of the gravitation room. Then, she smiled, pointing at Shi Yan. "This is my cousin. He said that, as long as he's here, no one can bully me anymore." Cousin? Hao Hai and Ming Mei were suspicious. Since when did she have a cousin? As they were all the young talents of the Divine Great Land, it wasn't the first time Hao Hai and Ming Mei visited the Dead Soul Mountain Range, or the first time they had contacted Lin Yiqi. They knew that Li Zhengrong's two disciples were both orphans, whom Li Zhengrong had been taking care since they were little. How could an orphan have a cousin all of a sudden? Well, nowadays, cousins are things we can't clarify. The one I love, I could call him cousin too. Haha. Ming Mei beamed a tender smile, looking at Shi Yan and Lin Yiqi with dark thoughts showing on her face. Hao Hai got it, as his face turned colder. He liked Lin Yiqi, and Ming Mei knew that well. He was still suspicious, but after Ming Mei stirred up the matter, he got it immediately. *TCH. Lin Yiqi glared at Ming Mei with hostility as she was cursing the girl in her head. Actually, she had mouthed the word, but she didn't make a sound. Lin Yiqi wasn't an idiot. She understood that Ming Mei burned it up on purpose. The relationship between Lin Yiqi and Hao Hai used to be a bit harmonious. If Ming Mei hadn't added things at the wrong timing, which provoked Hao Hai's mood, Hao Hai wouldn't have misbehaved with her. It would not accelerate to a violent dispute like right now. The hatred she had for Ming Mei was deeper than what she felt for Hao Hai. If it weren't that Ming Mei was more dangerous than Hao Hai, she would have taken action against that woman earlier. "Cousin, they want to bully me," Lin Yiqi called out with her soft voice and innocent appearance. She pointed at Ming Mei and Hao Hai. "These two aren't good people. They harm other people daily. Well, especially the one who always pours oil into fire. I think she regrets that she can't kill some girls who are more beautiful than her. Well, you know, that sort of people are the most disgusting ones." Ming Mei's pupils shrank. She curled her lips and snorted. "Are you talking about me?" Women always cared about their appearances, especially pretty women. Lin Yiqi's words, of course, got the other girl on her nerves. "Nah, how dare I talk about you? Everybody knows that you are the most beautiful woman." Ming Mei, "Yeah, right? You are so beautiful," Lin Yiqi mocked with a cold face. Ming Mei let out a light chuckle, but her eyes shimmered with cold light. She was a bit gloomy as she was looking at the other girl, seeming to be thoroughly provoked. "Do you want to interfere in others' business?" Although Hao Hai was enraged, he still had his clear mind. He could recognize that Shi Yin wasn't just an ordinary man. "I will not interfere in others' business," smiled Shi Yin. Hao Hai relaxed his stiff face, while Lin Yiqi got angry, rolling her eyes at him. Ming Mei found it interesting, chuckling and looking at him. "It's my cousin's business. How I can consider it other people's business?" Shi Yin smiled faintly. He stood upright and curled his lips, his manners as sharp as a knife when he shouted, "Stop babbling. If you want to fight, move your A*S. I don't have much time for you." In that fraction of time, the indignant feature on Lin Yiqi's face vanished. She smiled cheerily until her body shook. "I knew it. My cousin likes me the most." Shi Yin felt his hair raising as he beamed a forced smile in his heart. However, he still appeared cold as usual. Hao Hai was enraged. Cold light sparked like electric currents in his eyes. The aura on him became more murderous, but his face was getting calmer. "Brilliant hotshot," Shi Yin exclaimed in his head. It was the first time he showed his serious countenance. Now he knew that the young generation nurtured by the 7 ancient factions were really tough to deal with. During a fight, the more one got angry, the more chances one had to fall into the disadvantaged circumstances. When the hotshots fought, they competed each other in aura, mood, experience, and intelligence. During a battle, if the opponent could control the mood, one's aura would change accordingly, which would affect the whole picture of the battle. When a warrior had rage affecting his mind, he couldn't react with clarity. Losing the mind meant losing the grasp of the whole situation. Right before the fight, Hao Hai could restore his sound mind, which was what a typical hotshot would do. "I don't care if you're her cousin or not. Frankly speaking, you irritate me. If I don't feel good, you shouldn't expect to feel good either." Hao Hai gave him a faint smile, his face calm and relaxed. However, his aura became more dangerous. Replying to Hao Hai, 3 words came from Shi Yan's side. "Come beat me." All of a sudden, Hao Hai moved like a thunderbolt tearing the sky. Strong, determined, evil, and brutal. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.